What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Second Guessing with Stressin. I'm your host, Garrett Williams, aka Texans Commenter. Today, we got a very special and unique guest, Coach Dan Casey. You might see him on social media, on X, on Instagram, YouTube, everywhere. I regard him as a football savant and offensive mastermind. So, Dan, welcome. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show. This is first time streaming, so I'm excited to jump in and chat a little Texans football and anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, we talked briefly about that before, and I personally never thought that I would be someone doing this. And out of all the stuff that I do, I think this might be my favorite. And so, hopefully, you kind of realize the same when you do it today, and maybe it'll be something you do. But the engagement, interaction with the fans is awesome. So, but yeah, as I alluded to, obviously, you've built up a pretty good page on all the different platforms where basically you're going over just different offensive concepts, plays, schemes, whatever it may be. You just seem to be like a football nut like the rest of us.
For sure.
And when I went and researched about you, you obviously have your own website. You're an author. You've written books. But I didn't know you're also an offensive coordinator too at a high school. Is that correct?
So I was for several years. I was a high school head coach for about 5 years in North Carolina. Moved actually to Houston right after COVID, and was the offensive coordinator at Episcopal High School right there in Bel Air for a little while. 3 years there, and then really just kind of the football stuff started to grow, and I was able to kind of take a step away from teaching and coaching and go full time into consulting and writing and researching football full time. So I have to pinch myself sometimes that I get to do this for a living, but it's the good life, man. I'm really loving it.
That's awesome. Okay, so you aren't simultaneously an OC and also doing what you're doing.
I was for 3 years, but I think I ended up getting so busy with this stuff, and I was doing so much traveling that I really wasn't able to commit the time that I wanted to high school. I mean, if you take football seriously, you're all in all the time, and I got to work for a great head coach there at Episcopal High School. Steve Lease coached, Donovan Jackson, Jalen Waddle, Walker Little. Some great players came through there, and when he retired, it was kind of the right time for me to go off on my own and do this thing full time. So yeah, man, it's been fun. I haven't looked back yet.
You personally coach those guys,
So I didn't coach those guys. They were a little bit before me.
but they were at
Steve,
this.
Steve did. Yeah, Steve Lease was the head coach there, and so great program, great tradition. We had some good years there as well when I was there. And our quarterback Carson Gordon, he's at UCLA now, doing great things. So yeah, it was a blast, man. I love high school football, but as this platform has kind of grown, and I've just gotten connected with so many coaches around the country, and had a chance to do all the travel and go see people throughout the off season, throughout the season. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
That's awesome. And so you mentioned you do consulting too. Like, what does that look like? You come in and just, help them understand a new concept, or just kind of like, do a self scout, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unique for everybody. I think some guys, everybody wants something a little bit different. I think the main thing I try to do is understand what they're doing and what they want to do, and how I can be of some support to them along the way. Coaching is the most fun you'll ever have. It also can tend to be a lonely profession where, because it's so competitive, sometimes you don't have somebody you can bounce ideas off and talk to without feeling like you're losing a competitive advantage in some way. And so yeah, I think it looks different for different guys, but it's been really fun just getting connected with these coaches all over the country, and frankly all over the world. There's a huge contingent of coaches all over Europe and South America and Mexico, and I mean, football's a big deal, and it's continuing to grow. And I love just kind of being on the front lines of helping football grow. Period. So it's been fun.
That's awesome. And so, like, I was just going to kind of ask you, like, that's normally my first question with guests. And like, my goal with what I do is, to help people better get to know others, like, in this football world. And you kind of answered most of it, but I guess if you could say, if there's anything I missed, like kind of like what led you to what you're doing now, is just like a natural, organic love of football type of thing, I guess.
I've always loved football. I played at Davidson College in North Carolina. Our claim to fame was Steph Curry. We had a sociology class together during the NBA lockout, and he
No
went to
way.
class, man. He came to class every day. Awesome dude. Great person, great player. Obviously, that's as clear as day.
That's
But the
insane.
football program was not good at all when I was there. Partly because I was there and I wasn't very good. So I was a high school quarterback. Got on campus and realized that I had a noodle arm and couldn't throw the ball nearly as well as anybody else on the roster. And so transitioned to defensive back. Got to play a lot on a team that really struggled, like I said, in part because of myself and not being very good on defense. But always kind of knew I had that innate love for the game and wanted to continue on. And actually worked out for some teams in Canada and tried to kind of make it past my college days. And
As a defensive back?
as a DB, yeah, wasn't good enough.
Cooper DeJean?
No, I was nowhere near.
Hey, I was a white receiver. It was tough
There
for
you
me.
go.
You were a white defensive back.
I was not an exciting white. I was a boring white. So, it was, but I had a blast, man. I loved playing the game. I thought nothing could compare to that. And then I got into coaching and it just scratched like a different itch. And I think the cool thing for me was I was debating, do I go GA and be a college coach? That was kind of one of the things that I'd considered doing, or do I jump into high school coaching? And I was fortunate enough. I was 24 years old. I got to be a head coach at a high school program in North Carolina when I was 24. And it was an incredible learning experience for me because I knew nothing. I knew nothing about coaching, knew nothing about play calling. I just knew nothing. And it was a small school in North Carolina. And I just threw myself into it full on. And, the way I tell the story is basically I was the one varsity coach on campus. All the other coaches were kind of coming from off campus. They were volunteering or, maybe a dad or somebody working. And so I just was desperate to talk football with somebody and anybody. And so I started a Twitter account and just started interacting with coaches all over the country. And it blew up, man. It blew up. It's kind of surreal. Went from just kind of posting a play every day and trying to understand the game a little bit more. And the more you study, the more you know. And then the more you realize you don't know that much at all. And so that's the cool thing for me about football is it's a never ending well of knowledge. You can study it obsessively for 10 years like I have and still feel like you haven't even cracked the surface of what you can learn.
Well, that's going to be like demolishing for us fans to hear. All of us, Texans fans or whatever fans think we're like the smartest. And to know someone like you who literally just grinds tape all the time and knows every kind of concept admits that you still don't know everything. So maybe that's like a check for someone like me who thinks I know what I'm talking about, that maybe I quite don't. But
but that's part of the fun of it. I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like you start to learn and you feel like you know a lot, and then you kind of hit this plateau and you realize, wow, I have a lot to learn. And I have just so much appreciation for the coaching community. It's an incredible community that if you have questions is going to help you answer things. And so yeah, I've just been really blessed. I've had so many coaches over the years take me under their wing and show me the ropes and teach me things. And I try to pay it forward and pass some of those things along to whether it's fans, players, coaches, whoever ends up following.
That's incredible. And I kind of see like a likeness. Obviously, your platform is way bigger than mine, but I kind of have a somewhat similar story with what I'm doing with this. This is like obviously not my full-time job, but I'm just a born and raised Houston Texans fan, every sport. Yep. Just made a Twitter about a year and a half ago, like separate from a personal one, to like talk ball, and it just naturally grew. It sounds like the same for you. And
totally.
And so how long did it take for you to build to where you're at social media wise?
It's probably been about 10 years. I think there isn't really shortcuts in my opinion. I know technically you can go viral and blow up, but I think for me, it's just been the consistency day in and day out. It's just what you're about. And I think just trying to do right by people as much as you can. And I would say in 10 years in, I've definitely built a loyal following, but I think the thing that I value most is the relationships and the people I can call on the phone and go see them at OTAs and training camp and go visit them for spring practice. Those are the best. Those are the best relationships that come out of it for sure.
That's funny because, I was a former player too. And like what I'm doing now, like you mentioned, scratch that itch. That's basically what this does for me. Like
totally.
We're just obsessed with football. It's like a way of being involved without being a coach, because those hours are insane, dude.
It's a grind.
And yeah. And so like that being said too, though, I had played at CBNF Austin for my undergrad, and I played in Incarnate Word for a couple years as
There
well.
you go.
And then I am involved in a nonprofit, which is essentially a booster club for the Incarnate Word football team. But
Love
I
it.
met and got to know and I guess become friends with Connor McQueen, who
Love
we
Connor.
had talked. So we had talked to, I forget how it came up, but he told me about you. And so I guess we kind of talked about that. But I guess you want to talk about, people you've met and Connor. And did you know much about Incarnate Word football?
Yeah, so I mean, it's crazy. Incarnate Word is, I think, recently been kind of at the center of. It feels like sometimes the center of the football world for me. Every once in a while, just the people I've met and connected with through that program. When GJ Kinney got there, well, I guess first it was Eric Morris, who was the head coach there. Did some great stuff and kind of got them rolling. And then GJ Kinney came in, and at the time, Mac Leftwich was the offensive coordinator. Mac's a good friend of mine. He's at Texas
Mac's
Tech now.
awesome, dude. He's about
Mac
to tear it up, dude. They're going to tear it up.
They have an incredible roster
And
at
they got
Texas
all that
Tech.
money, right? Yeah.
When you put good people who know ball with a lot of money, it's usually a good formula. I'm really excited for Mac. I mean, he's a grinder. He's somebody who's worked his tail off to be where he's at, and it was cool to see. I mean, I've known Mac since he got the job at Incarnate Word to Texas State and what they did there, all the way up through now at Texas Tech. And it was cool to see, Mac transition into Texas State with GJ, and then Connor, another friend of mine, coming in and getting the OC job there at Incarnate Word. And Connor's got such a unique background, obviously playing at A&M, but also some of the coaches he's gotten to work with, Chip Kelly, and there's several others, just like elite coaches, and Lincoln Riley and others, and then him getting to call it for a few years and really establish an identity there. And now he's back with Chip in Vegas. And so, it's just cool to be along for a minor part of these guys' rides through the coaching profession and celebrate their successes and see some of the tough times as well, and have some conversations about that. And so, the cool thing about Incarnate Word, I think, is it's almost like a petri dish for coaches, man. Like there's a lot of opportunity to let it rip, man, to try some things out from a roster management standpoint, from an offensive standpoint. I think it's an up and coming program for sure. And it's been fun to watch them succeed.
Yeah, and shout out my friend Clint Killow. He's the head coach there. I mean, he's
Yes.
the next guy. I mean, he's on the fast track. He's special, man. I don't know if you know
And
much about
how
him.
old was Clint when he got the job? He was like in his 20s, wasn't he?
Like he might have been 29. I want to say he's
Unreal.
32 now.
Yeah.
I'm 36. Like I forget. I mean, but the one thing like about him, in my opinion, why he has been successful is like his drive, like his passion is
Absolutely.
like unmatched. Like no one will outwork him. But he has like a special blend of like that. He's also a great recruiter.
No doubt. Yeah.
And he can balance between, being the hard coach, but also still being your friend. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, but I've learned a lot. And
No
and like
doubt.
you just mentioning how cool it is for you to kind of see your network and friends move. Like I've, experienced that on a much smaller scale, like, my little world, Incarnate Word. And it feels awesome. Like Jonathan Packey was my former teammate
Yep.
at SFA and roommate when I went to Incarnate Word just randomly when he was a GA there. And now he's the DC at Duke, and Baldau was at Miami before. You got
crazy,
Ephraim
man.
Banda, who's a defensive back coach at, the Browns. It's just,
Yeah.
that's just one area. So I can only imagine your world and how spread out it is. So
Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, it takes so much hard work and a little bit of luck to be a great coach. And it's just cool when you see those guys kind of catch lightning in a bottle, and certainly hoping, that's the case for Mac at Texas Tech and Connor in Vegas, that things kind of continue to go well for them.
that's awesome. And so obviously this is, Texans based. So we'll kind of transition towards that now. And, I guess we'll start off with first, unfortunately, last year, 2024. Before that, obviously, the first year with D'Amico and Bobby Slowik and CJ Stroud rookie year, they kind of took the league by storm and surprised people. CJ Stroud, rookie of the year, make it to the playoffs, yada, yada, yada. Expectations are sky high going to the next year. You get all these free agents and this and that. But then we saw how it played out and was kind of underwhelming and led to Bobby Slowik's firing. I guess, what was your take on that? Like the rise and fall, and what ultimately led to that decision by D'Amico?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, obviously that offense in year one was really fun to study. I thought CJ obviously surprised some people. I think everybody thought he had a particular skill set, but I think his poise and his accuracy and everything that he did in year one was exceptional. And I think the reality is, and this is something that I think sometimes gets lost in the conversation because a lot of fans are so focused on their particular team. The amount of Kyle Shanahan disciples that have kind of spread out through the league, there's a lot of them now. And even if you're not maybe straight from the Shanahan tree, you're borrowing a lot of the concepts. And so I think people are starting to see that stuff week in and week out, and it gets really hard to consistently put together game plans that challenge defenses. And I think year two, the interesting thing, in my opinion, at least, when you're watching quarterbacks develop in the NFL and college, whatever the case may be, when a quarterback surprises you and has success, maybe not far beyond, but definitely beyond expectation, I think the temptation is that you're going to see a massive leap in year two, when the reality is, like, defenses now have a year's worth of tape on you. They're seeing some of your tendencies and your tells, and it can be a little more difficult to have like huge steps in year two. And so I think the other temptation is when you have a quarterback who shows up as a rookie, balls out, and now is kind of like pressing elite status even in the NFL. Sometimes as a play caller and coordinator, the temptation is, well, we can solve all the world's problems through the pass game. And I think the reality is, a lot of coaches over the years have kind of realized that when you're putting so much pressure on the pass game, it really can take a toll throughout the course of the season when you're struggling to protect and injuries pile up and different things like that. And I always go back to Bill Walsh, who obviously the inventor of the West Coast offense, one of the greatest coaches of all time. And he used to say that, offensive coaches, the real successful ones, spend way more time on the run game than they spend on the pass game. And so, I think you ultimately need an investment in the run game. And so it'll be interesting to see with this transition. I think in some ways that was something D'Amico was trying to change up a little bit of, hey, we need to get back to running the football, using play action, and not putting so much stress on CJ in the drop back pass game. That could certainly be part of it.
Yeah, and so, I think that's true, and I think the big thing people don't realize, like, obviously the O-line gets a lot of blame and underperform, but to me it was multiple things. It was more so just the pass protections and the scheme as a whole, which, as you alluded to, might just be the overall Shanahan scheme being exposed. But like you mentioned, if I saw today, like, the Texans were like the worst on first down running, I forget the metric, but basically we were constantly behind the stick. So now you're in these predictable second and long, third and long, putting pressure on the play caller and the quarterback to pass. But just to rehash, though, you mentioned, so it sounded like, I kind of felt like that, and some people said it too, like it felt like last year specifically that the Shanahan scheme like almost got figured out. Maybe it was coincidence. Obviously, San Fran had an off year, but they had injuries to McCaffrey and maybe some linemen. The Dolphins kind of seemed to have some of an off year, and then the Texans. So do you think there was much to that? And so I've always kind of argued too, like, yes, I do think CJ Stroud regressed a little bit, but like when people talked about sophomore slump, to me, and maybe this is just me, enabling my prime quarterback or whatever, but I'm kind of saying the sophomore slump was on Bobby Slowik. So I don't know if I gave you one question on that, but just kind of talk about the Shanahan scheme.
Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing is San Francisco actually had a pretty efficient offense. Like, if you look at some of the metrics, and especially with what Brock Purdy did in the pass game, they were still pretty efficient. They obviously didn't run the ball as well. I think, the reality in the league is, like, when injuries pile up, like, it makes a huge difference in what you're able to get done on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know. I don't like to say things like this offense got figured out so much as it gets over-indexed. And what I mean by over-indexed is, like, when you have a bunch of play callers from the same tree calling the same concepts week in and week out, defenses get good at what they see a lot. That's just the reality. And defensive coordinators adjust to to what they're seeing consistently. And I think the Shanahan style offense like particularly did well against the Dan Quinns of the world and people that were playing a lot of single high and playing cover 3 and different things like that. And so adjusting some of their schemes to this 2 high world that we're all living in with the Fangios and others, that'll be an interesting thing to see. Obviously, I expect to see someone like Kyle Shanahan continue to evolve. He's also got a longer leash. Like he can have a year that's maybe not his best year as a play caller, come back and continue to evolve. When you're someone like Bobby Slowik and year 2 as a play caller, you're already on the hot seat. That's really challenging. That's really tough. And so I think the guys that are typically either have the longest leash or have the most capacity to adapt are the play calling head coaches. I think if you're not a play calling head coach, a lot of times you are also trying to adapt your play calling to what the head coach wants. So again, it's challenging. The league is difficult. It's highly competitive. The difference between the Tennessee Titans and the Philadelphia Eagles is not as big as people make you think. You watch the Eagles get in dogfights with the Falcons and the Saints, and that's a dominant Super Bowl champion team that had to gut out some wins and even took some losses. And so the league there's a lot of parity in the league, and the difference between winning and losing is razor thin at times. And so again, I talked a lot there, but what I really want to come through is like, I think when you see an offensive system a lot, you're going to defenses are going to be more effective against it.
That's like lefties and righties in baseball. You're used to seeing righties all the time, and then now you throw in a lefty. But at a certain point in time, the Shanahan scheme was the lefty, but now it's become the righty.
Correct.
And it's just like it's similar to the league evolving from a run heavy offense to a pass heavy offense, and now it's kind of reverting back to where now if you're more of a run heavy team, you might be able to attack better. And so that's kind of funny. It's like the ebb and flow of it. But as far as Slowik goes, I do think that you brought up a good point too. Like it takes time. I think he was kind of dealt a bad hand. I mean, obviously he got promoted. He wasn't even a position coach before. And then now you're in this scheme that is, I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, is somewhat rigid. It's the wide zone. So it's not as adaptable or adjustable as some of these other offenses. So you kind of key in on this one concept that your whole offense is based off of. From my understanding, if you're a wide zone running team, that now translates to your pass protection, which is more correlated to slides, so the play actions match up. And so basically what I'm trying to say is he only, was new in the league, had only known one system, and you're trying to stick to that. And then on top of that, from my understanding, that system is like pretty detailed and hard to, one, coach, and two, pick up, because most guys are used to gap blocking, especially your O linemen. So they have to learn new techniques, foot placement, hand placement, from everything I've heard through interviews. So you have that hurdle. And like, there was this big talk, and I did research, and there was like grades showing it in stats that a lot of teams in the Shanahan scheme, run blocking, we're talking about running, it all predicates off the run, especially in this scheme. They don't really see the jump until year 3. And so he never got to get that far. So I bet he was like, man, I'm so close. Just like, please. But like, we're in this CJ Stroud rookie window where like the urgency is at an all-time high. And so, on one hand, I'm frustrated with him for not adapting, adjusting. On the other hand, it's like, I kind of get it. Do you kind of agree with those sentiments a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think that's all. It's all interesting stuff that you bring up. And I think what I go back to is like, if you look at the OG Kyle Shanahan and you look at his best offenses and why they were good, it's an all 11 type of situation. It is Brandon Ayuk is blocking his butt off. Juwan Jennings is blocking. Everyone's really bought into the run game. And I think when you're constructing a roster and putting together a team that has a certain amount of belief in what we're going to do from a schematic standpoint, that's really important. And I think sometimes, fans can get really excited about off-season additions and bringing in talented players. And just because you're a talented player doesn't necessarily mean you perfectly vibe with the scheme that's being run. And I think Buffalo is a great example of this, right? Everybody was freaking out. They don't have any good players, blah, 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 blah. And who played really, really well for them? Mac Hollins. Matt Collins is, a lot of people thought of him as a special teamer. Well, the reality is he was completely bought into the scheme that Joe Brady was trying to run, completely bought into doing the dirty work in their run game, and then feasting off of that in the pass game. And I think buy-in is such an underrated aspect of what you're trying to do. And a lot of times when you're not, when you haven't maybe earned your stripes like a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan to be able to say, hey, you just got to trust me. This is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to do it. It can be hard to sometimes earn some of that buy-in. And again, it's what comes first, the cart or the horse too. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. And I think I would imagine, we're talking about Joe Brady right now and the Buffalo Bills, and we're talking about how incredible of an offensive mind Joe Brady is, and he is. He had some rough years in Carolina. And so sometimes it's the fit is just not right, and the situation's just not right. And, obviously my hope for Bobby Slowik is that he's able to bounce back and continue to evolve, just like guys like Joe Brady and others have. And but I think what's interesting is, and this is to kind of transition us a little bit, is when you look at a guy like Sean McVay, he ran it wasn't exactly the Shanahan style system, but wide zone, play action, boot with Jared Goff. And his system has evolved quite a bit since they've added Matthew Stafford. And so obviously you guys are adding a Sean McVay, coach from his staff in Nick Caley. And so I would imagine, are you going to see some of that Shanahan style stuff? Yeah, you're still going to see some of that. You're also going to see some of the stuff that McVay has adapted. You're also going to see some of the stuff that he probably learned from McDaniels in New England. So you're having three very different systems, and every coach kind of evolves into their own version of it. And it's a process. And so, but it'll be interesting to see how he's able to marry up some of the things that he's learned with the current roster and what Houston's trying to be moving forward.
Absolutely. And you brought up some good points too. So like the first one is like personnel, and I was going to bring that up, but like the other point you brought up was buy-in. That's pretty interesting. So, like I had mentioned, Bobby Slowik had never coached a position before. So maybe that was part of it. He was younger, unproven. Maybe it was harder for him to get certain guys to buy into playing certain roles. And obviously things can go south quick when things start going bad. It can snowball.
Yeah.
But I was going to say too, like he also somewhat got dealt a bad hand in the sense that he had this very niche offense, which my understanding for the wide zone offense is like almost a completely different type of skill set for O-line. You would kind of want more undersized, agile, sideline to sideline guys, cerebral guys, as opposed to your bigger mauler, just block the guy in front of you. And that's basically what he had. And so that's where I was frustrated this year. Like I started to track it, I would track like the splits as far as zone to gap runs. And it was almost always like 30-10, like, overwhelmingly, obviously it's his wide zone scheme. But then the times when we did run more gap, we ran the ball better. And like, cause I was on to it, was like, these guys are gap blocking linemen.
For
But
sure.
again, he's also investing his time into making this happen. So like he was probably reaching that breaking point. But like it got towards the end of the year, it's like, all right, like we have to run gap scheme. And from what I've heard from insiders and from what I tracked later in the year, we ran gap scheme. And that's when the offense actually did good and ran the ball. And it's like a direct correlation. But supposedly it was at the behest of the players. Like they're finally like, hey man, like we need to do this. And so that probably is what ultimately led to his firing. But I think we can kind of put a bow on that. I think most fans, he's also become like the boogeyman too. But
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, but before we move on, I do think your point is really interesting about obviously like the offensive line from a personnel perspective. Being constructed as more of like a gap scheme, maybe like duo, more downhill run type schemes, and that's probably true. Obviously, you're well versed in the Texans roster, probably far more than I am. But I do think one of the challenges in coaching is if you've come from a system where everything is tied together, and the wide zone run, like when we talk about wide zone, it's not a scheme that lives on its own. It is tied together with your boot packages, your play action. It's tied together with your screens. It's tied together. So everything, if you're building a world like in Minecraft or something, that's the centerpiece of it, but everything comes off of it. And when you're not able to do that, like, yes, you can run a gap scheme and it's maybe a more effective run, but how does that run action marry up with your play action and your boot? And now all of a sudden now we're not running as much boot. And since you're not running wide zone, boot doesn't really look good anymore. And CJ is getting that pressure in his face. The screen game doesn't look as good. It's not as cohesive, right? And so that can be one of the real challenges as an offensive coach is you may have a system that you really want to run. And when things are going south and maybe you have injuries or different issues that you're dealing with, the question you got to ask is, okay, can we adapt and put together a run game that we can marry up all these other, concepts with? And I think if you look at someone like Ben Johnson, like he's done an excellent job of marrying up his gap, like some of the gap scheme runs that he does with his pass game and his boots and different things like that. And so, but again, it's a process. It's an evolution as a coach of trying to figure out, okay, if we're running the ball, like what's our go-to? And then once we've decided that and once we've figured that out, how do we build a world off of that for the pass game? Because the worst thing you can do is sit there and drop back pass and try to beat these defenses, because the edge rushers are too good and the secondaries are too good and the coaches are too good. And I know people in the chat are mentioning Brian Flores, like he's going to make your life miserable. And Brian Flores is not dissimilar to like a Jim Schwartz, right? Who he's going to really threaten offensive coordinators with negative plays, similar to Jim Schwartz. And in order as a play caller, in order to have success, you have to be able to eat some negatives, because eventually you're going to catch him and have a big chunk play. And when you watched McVay go against the Vikings, they were able to pop some screens against Flores. They were able to get into some different things that created some explosive plays for them. And when you're playing a team like Minnesota, you have to get explosives, like because they're going to create so many negatives for you.
But
and
then
so
you deter them to get out of that, right? If you catch them so many times, now it's like, oh crap, we can't be too, right? I mean,
yeah,
it
I
kind
mean,
of like comes a cat and mouse game eventually.
theoretically, yes. I think Brian Flores is so aggressive that he's
They
gonna
don't
he's
care.
gonna stick to his guns, man. He's gonna rip you. And I think that's a really interesting way of playing defense. I think some guys have the stomach for it and some guys don't.
Like boom or bust almost,
It,
right? You can
it
just have
is.
a
It is.
dominant game or
100%. And I think they were really dominant for a long time. And then I think people started to figure out a few things that they could do against him. But yeah, I mean, it's being an offensive play caller in the NFL, I think is one of the hardest jobs in sports. Because it really comes down to ultimately this is the most important thing, period, is what does the relationship look like between the play caller and the quarterback? Like that is the most important relationship in all of sports. And when you see someone like McVay and Stafford, and you see the relationship that they're able to solve problems. I mean, they started 1-4. Like that could have been a disaster, but they were able to find their way. And it ultimately comes back to the relationship between the quarterback and the play caller. Can they work through it? Can they find solutions together? That's the ultimate sign of like, can you be successful in the NFL? Can you put a good play caller with a good quarterback, and can they be friends? Can they remain married?
I like to hear that. But you bring up another great point too. Like, so basically, like we've talked about, Slowik only been in the league so long, only pretty much knew one system, and also a rigid system that's kind of like you mentioned, it's married with these certain concepts. But then now all of a sudden your bread and butter zone running is not working and gaps working. But like basically he'd be like forced to abandon his offense and implement a whole new offense
Yeah.
mid to halfway through the season. So like to us fans, it's easier said than done. And I guess to your point too, like maybe if he's like a more seasoned coach, he might, have had time to get that done. But you're also having to teach these new concepts too. So yeah, it just wasn't, a great situation. And like honestly, I think the way they were able to like perform the team as a whole, turned out pretty good. But I guess we'll do a couple more things to kind of finally put a bow on it. Like my perception and from what I've heard and observed from pundits and whatnot, like it sounds like the Shanahan scheme, ironically, is a scheme that wants to make it easier for a quarterback by taking more off of their plate. But
Correct.
like from my experience as a fan, especially with what I saw with CJ Stroud, is like you actually did the opposite of what you wanted to do. So from my understanding, they're not involved in setting the pass protection, which can or cannot be a big deal. But I would think that if the quarterback is involved in pointing out the mic and knowing where to slide the protection or this or that, he now may have a better idea of knowing where the pressure may or may not come from, which can kind of help him. And then as far as audibles, like none of us will really know if we're not in that room or that building, but it didn't appear like there was a lot of autonomy there for him. And then, just another little gripe that I had, and I guess you can kind of address all these, whether you think they're true or not within that scheme. But, the same thing that made this offense great for the Texans and other Shanahan schemes to me was the condensed formations. But in year 2, that is what killed us because it invited more defenders into the box. You now have nickelbacks and safeties and corners right up to the line of scrimmage. And early on in the season, they mentioned Brian Flores. He basically gave out the recipe to beat us, in my opinion. He started just bringing heat off the edge, and guys would just come untouched. And so, this is why I'm more optimistic going forward. A lot of our pass protection issues, O-line, tight ends, running backs, seem to be mental, whether it was scheme and or coaching as opposed to physical. So I'm not sure if you got all of that, if you got anything to add to that.
I think, it's interesting. You mentioned, the piece about pass protection. In the NFL, everybody runs the same concepts, the same pass concepts. You're not going to see anybody reinvent the wheel by running something totally unseen before. Like I would say the closest to it was what Mike McDaniel did with Tyreek Hill and some of the creative motions he used, but he was using a creative motion to get to a standard pass concept, a dagger concept, right? And so you're not going to see anybody reinvent the wheel in terms of a passing concept. But I think Frank Reich said it best when he was talking about building an offense. He said that everybody runs the same pass concepts. What really separates kind of the good offenses from the ones that struggle are like, how deep of a bag do you have in pass protection? Because in the NFL, like you have to be pretty creative in your pass protections to beat some of these defenses, especially like a Brian Flores and some of the other guys that are bringing heat. But even just not exposing yourself to one-on-ones against the really good edge rushers that we have that are in the league. And so I think McVay's done a really good job with mixing in his pass protections, getting chips, doing different things like that. I think the guys that are having a lot of success are also not putting themselves in a lot of drop back situations. Cause if you're in second and longs and third and longs, you're not only are you inviting the rush, like you're inviting disaster really. And so when you're struggling to run the football, the screen game's maybe not what you want it to be. And then you're in third and longs. Like the reality is no matter who the coach is in the NFL, if you're putting yourself in that position, you don't have many good calls for that, and the pass protection.
I got to interrupt because you maybe realize something. Like, I wonder if there's like a way, or someone could do it to where you could boil it down to, okay, the Texans had X amount more of these situations you're talking about, because it's just hard to block in the NFL. But if you could like boil it down to a percentage, like, okay, we had the most pressures or most untouched pressures, but we also had the most disadvantageous situation. So if you could like compare it apple to apples, like maybe it's not as bad. It was just the volume, and it could really point to your fact about just avoiding, that would be an interesting.
Yeah. Possibly. I mean, I don't know the numbers. Again, I follow football religiously, but I'm not as dialed in as maybe you guys are with specifically the Texans. This is more just kind of some of my observations that I've made in the games that I've watched. But I think there's two parts to that, right? I think you'd mentioned the Shanahan offensive system is really built to take things off the quarterback's plate. And I think ideally with a young quarterback, that's actually like a positive, but that really requires you to have an effective run game, like just point blank period. If the run game is not effective, then you're running a totally different offense. And so I think that at the end of the day, like you can talk about some of the busts in pass protection and different things like that, but at the end of the day, I would say the majority of explosive plays in the NFL are going to come off of some sort of play action, even if it's not like
an ambiguous down, right? Like a second and third, like where you don't know there's run or pass, which would be play action.
Exactly. Yeah, and even just some of the drive starters, like getting going. Statistically, I know in college, like if you can convert that first down, your chances of scoring are astronomically higher. I mean, that's obvious, right? But like, just when you think about putting together a drive as a coordinator, you're not just thinking about like, okay, what are the 7 plays we need to score on this drive? Like, you're literally thinking, how do we get the first down to start getting in a rhythm and get going? And you can end up sitting on the bench a lot in the NFL when you're not successful on offense. And the rhythm component, especially for a young quarterback, is crucial. Like, I remember this was Stroud's rookie year. What was the game where he went crazy?
Tampa?
The Tampa game. I mean, he was just in the zone, and the rhythm that they had in the pass game and the different concepts they were using in the red zone. It was beautiful, right? And so when you're kind of having these fits and starts, that can be really, really challenging. And so I would imagine that they're going to put a lot more on Stroud's plate in year 3. I mean, you've got a coach coming from not only, experience with McVay, but also experience with Josh McDaniels and the kind of that Tom Brady-esque, Peyton Manning-esque, doing a lot at the line of scrimmage.
Give it all to me. I love it, dude. This is great.
But he's going to have a lot more on his plate. And when you hear McVay talk about Stafford, and just the control and mastery he has over the game. Now, obviously, like, it's tough, right? I mean, as a rookie, you have a ton of success and you maybe aren't asked to do as much at the line of scrimmage. And in year 2, you want to just run it back and repeat it. But it's a lot more difficult than that. And so I would imagine he's chomping at the bit from a mental standpoint, because I know he's a football junkie. I know he's chomping at the bit to do all that protection stuff and maybe get into their kills and their audibles and different things at the line of scrimmage. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what year 3 looks like after kind of an up and down year 2.
Yeah, so obviously, like, I'm an optimistic fan, and that's kind of what a lot of us are hoping for. And what's kind of what we've heard in the media. Stroud's had one presser this year, and he kind of alluded to the fact that he will have more command of the offense. And I guess, like you mentioned too, like, it's probably hard to tell as a fan or just watching film, but like, I've been in offenses that are advanced and I've been in offenses that are not advanced. And the one I watched last year seemed to be not advanced. Like, the quarterback, like, it seemed like he didn't have control. And you also mentioned earlier too, how important it is to have that relationship with the play caller and the quarterback. I'm hoping for a great relationship there. CJ Stroud also is like, his like idol is Matthew Stafford. So,
Yep.
I mean, it is pretty cool to see that. And we see how, so if I had to guess, like, it would be more so similar to the Rams. But obviously we mentioned, Josh McDaniels, Nick Caley was there with him. And then the Texans, their new O-line coach, initially we fired our O-line coach from last year and we hired the assistant. And so a lot of fans were like, what the heck? Why would you have a terrible O-line and then promote internally? But Cole Popovich, he was also in New England with Nick
Correct.
Caley and Josh McDaniels. And he was like supposedly regarded as like the Dante Scarnecchia, one of the best O-line coaches in the history of the NFL, like his like heir apparent. But like, there was like a COVID controversy. So there's a lot of that going in there. And I guess we've kind of talked about it. I guess just give me, if you haven't already, what you expect and what are some new things we can see from a Nick Caley led offense.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think, again, because he doesn't necessarily have the same like lineage and tape of all that the offenses he's called, because he's first time play caller in the NFL. But I think if you were to look at his history and who he's worked with, I think if you look at McDaniels and that Belichick, his time in New England, they are a very game plan focused team. So like, they're going to have like very specific schemes for each opponent. And that's really good if you have smart veteran players and a great O-line coach. And, that works pretty well. It can become like a really nasty grab bag if you got a lot of young guys rolling through the roster, as you've seen. And then you have them kind of the McVay. I'm sure you're going to have some of those staple concepts coming over with him after spending time in LA. So I do think it'll be an interesting mix. I would expect you see a lot of the McVay pass game stuff. I would imagine like the gap schemes and duo and getting downhill in the run game is going to be important. The screen game is going to be important. And then all those, game plan specific things that are very, very New England-y. you're going to see a lot of that as well. So again, this is all predictive because I can't say for sure, but based on some of his experiences, that's what I would anticipate. And at the end of the day, it really does come down to the quarterback position more than anything. And the guys that I've talked to throughout the league that I think have had the most like sustained long-term success have viewed the relationship between the play caller and the quarterback less as a coach and player relationship and more as a partnership of how do we work together to solve these problems. And I think that word partnership is kind of the most important piece here because the reality is the quarterback's making a lot more money than the coordinator. So
Yeah.
it's not like high school where you can tell a kid what to do. It is a partnership where you have to be on the same page about everything. You have to see the game the same way, and you have to be able to communicate at a super high level. It doesn't mean you have to agree on everything, but that partnership is crucial to the success of a team long term. When you're playing the same opponent multiple times throughout the season, sometimes as much as 3 if you see them in the playoffs, that is really, really hard to do. To beat a team twice or 3 times is dang near impossible. And so being able to come up with solutions together in that quarterback room and let it kind of emanate out through the rest of the roster, that's the most important thing in the NFL. Like that's why guys will not take jobs without the quarterback position. If they don't feel good about the quarterback position, they a lot of times will pass up a job. And so I think people feel pretty good about CJ Stroud, and now he's got an opportunity to really kind of take the reins.
And us as fans, like obviously we don't know, so we can only speculate. But if we had to guess how that was with Slowik and Stroud, not only based off what we saw, but like just judging, like you would, and there also was reports, like there was a report from Lance Zierlein that supposedly during his 30 visit or whatever visit the combine, that Slowik was like trying to play like Mr. Hardo and was doing weird stuff like, and whether it was true or not, it was out there. So it sounds like from what we can gather, that was not the case. But then now you look at Caley, he seems like an energetic, hyped up players coach, that it will be more of that equal. And that makes total sense to me. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you're not on the field. So you have to rely on the player to tell
Right.
you what they're seeing and what they're feeling. And you have to cater to their strengths. And so, a lot of stuff that you said, about which offense they'll run, the type, they'll do game plan, like I tend to agree because I watch like every interview and pay close attention to what's being said by players and coaches. D'Amico, when he fired Bobby Slowik, the sentiment was we need to like basically the two things was adapt and adjust, which I agree. We were too rigid. We couldn't adapt and adjust for the reasons that we mentioned, which may have been out of control, may not. And then when Nick Caley had his presser of getting hired, he mentioned it again. And then Nick Caley, that's the way he talked. And he talked about, the two things was making the offense around your personnel, not the other way around. And
Right.
so, and that includes your O-line and your quarterback. And then he also mentioned you vary it based off your opponent. So, I mean, to me, it all sounds right. I guess like you kind of already said this, but like, is it that hard to do that? Like, and because a lot of people, when they hear that, when they first heard it, like they would much rather have an offense with an identity. But like we went from that, like we have an identity, but the identity didn't work. And now we're like, people are worried, like, are we going to be like this amoeba now? So
Yeah.
what's the challenge in that?
Well, I think the one of the difficulties with coaching is like obviously us as coaches, we all have experiences, we all have like things we're most comfortable with. And obviously, I've always said that coaching is problem solving. Like that is the main thing. And this is a bit of a tangent, but the one of the winningest coaches in all of high school football history, Bob Ladouceur at De La Salle High School in California. I got a chance to interview him a couple years ago and sat down and just had this long conversation with him about kind of coaching and what he built at De La Salle. At one point, I think they had won like 150 straight games or something insane like that. And I asked him, like what was the difference in his culture? Like what was it about his culture that made De La Salle so special? And I was expecting him to say like all these kind of hokey things they would do in the off season and, Navy SEAL training and all that stuff. And that's not what he said at all. He said it was specific football knowledge. He said, if one of my players had a question, I either had the answer or I went and found the answer immediately. And so it was this kind of culture that he built of problem solving. Like that was the most important thing. How can we make you successful on the field? And so I think at the end of the day, yes, it's about the plays you call and the offense you design and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's like, how do we solve the problems we're facing week in and week out? How do we nip them in the bud right away? Because, like you said, I mean, and in the same way that offense is a copy, like NFL is a copycat league, and everybody starts running the same things when they have success. Exact same thing is true on defense. When someone gives you a formula, you run with it, right? I mean, it goes back to when McVay was in the Super Bowl. Earlier that year, they had played the Bears, and Fangio got in that funky front and kind of shut down the run game. Belichick copy and pasted it in the Super Bowl and gave them fits. And when people figure out something that you want to do and can take it away, what are your solves? And so I think the focus of the offense will be kind of that problem solving dynamic of how do we fix things within the scheme that we're trying to do. And the real challenge for coaches is sometimes you do kind of reach the limits of your knowledge and what you feel comfortable teaching and installing and all those things. And so the real great coaches have so much experience and problem solving ability that they're able to just continue evolving. You look at Chip Kelly. What he ran at Oregon when they were the best team in college football, totally different than what he ran at Ohio State to win a national
I wanted him to
championship.
be our OC so bad, man. I thought that would have been.
He's phenomenal. He is phenomenal.
But not for $5 million or whatever it was. That was insane.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap. It wasn't cheap. But yeah, I mean, I think the best ones adapt, and the only way to adapt is to continue to learn. And that's obviously what I'm most passionate about, continuing to learn and equip these coaches. And so yeah, I mean, I think you can talk about, some people have, I love the quote. It's some people have 30 years of experience and some people have 1 year of experience 30 times. And so, it's, are you developing, growing? Are you learning through the process of coaching, or are you kind of just spamming the same thing year in and year out? And you don't last very long in the NFL if you're not adapting and evolving.
Well, I love that, and this makes me feel more confident because again, Slowik was just one system, one scheme. Now, whereas Caley has seen multiple different things, so now he can have more answers. And it also seems to me like you mentioned, becoming predictable or having to adapt after so many years. Like there almost is an advantage to having a new OC. Like obviously that's a risk, but there's also the element of the unknown, right? I mean, a lot of teams would want to attack us the way they did last year, but now they don't know if that's going to be the same. It probably won't. And we saw that obviously in year one with Slowik. So maybe that's why that offense was so good in year one, is because they didn't quite know what to get. So I guess, is that something that's valid? And I guess you could also look at, Zach Robinson. He came from the McVay tree. His first year, he had a top 6 offense with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. So, I mean, do you think that, Caley has those advantages and can kind of, have success early on?
Yeah, I mean it's a really good question. I think we're kind of veering into similar territory though. Of do people see some of the McVay stuff too much now, where they're seeing it week in and week out?
All right, we're going to McDaniels now.
No, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that I think is interesting is you look at Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. Like, yes, he came from the McVay tree, so to speak, and has a lot of those offensive principles. He's also adapted quite a bit, but he also played for Belichick, and he has some of that New England roots to him. And he's, when we talk about offensive trees, like, yes, you get similarities, but people will often branch off and kind of explore some other things as well. So it really comes down.
Is that like a dumb-minded thing by us humans? Like we just can't grasp that it might be no, it has to be like because we can't try and figure out
Yeah, I mean, I think it's success also, can give us success can sometimes be the worst thing we can experience early on as a play caller. I remember that happened to me as a high school coach where, we came out and we ran tempo, no huddle, and tore some teams up and had an undefeated season, had a great year. And then the next year I was just like rinse and repeat. And teams had really adapted to what we were doing and figured some things out. And we really struggled in that year too. And I had to adapt and grow. And so, I've certainly experienced it as well. Like no one's immune to, sometimes you get the false positive of success. Not that it's a false positive, because obviously you put in the work and you get the results, but you tend to think that the things that worked last year are going to work this year. And that's not always
figured out.
Yeah, that's not always the case. And so, again, I think I can almost guarantee you that we will see Bobby Slowik being a successful NFL play caller in a few years. I can almost guarantee it. This was some growing pains for sure. But I think the exciting thing for Texans fans is, I mean, that's not your problem anymore. Your issue now is, all right, how do you empower a quarterback on a rookie contract who can be a top tier quarterback in the league, and how do you get the most out of him and the roster you've put together for the window that you have? Because the reality is, when that big contract hits, the roster is going to have to look a lot different, and the construction of the team is going to have to look a lot different. And so, you know, I think in talking with guys in the NFL, everyone has windows. You have windows to accomplish certain things, and then you have to reinvent yourself. And I think, I know I keep going back to Sean McVay because it's just so impressive what he's done, but you know, losing some of the players that they've lost, like an Aaron Donald and you know, Jalen Ramsey and others, and then you're seeing them reinvent themselves defensively. You're seeing him reinvent his offensive system, and reinvention is kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, he's insane, man. I mean, and even last year too, like they had the Eagles, they on the last play of the game almost won the game in Philly in the snow, and then Philly went on to be like this juggernaut. So I mean,
Yeah.
like they're a damn good team, and the Texans playing week 1, so that'll be awesome to see, just from that element, and then also the Nick Caley, Sean McVay. So
Yes.
but yeah, no, I'm super optimistic. I guess a couple of questions, like kind of just to backtrack, and then I'll probably let you go here in the next 5-10 minutes. I know it's been about an hour.
That's been fun, man.
And so like a lot of the stuff too that beat us last year was like simple stunts and twists and delayed blitzes, stuff like that. Is that stuff that you think that we can fix, and why was that an issue, do you think?
Everything is fixable. Um, but then the question you're asking is, do we go out and fix it with roster additions? Do we try to fix it with scheme changes? And obviously, like that's the question everyone's asking. The stunt thing, yeah, that can certainly be solved schematically and with some of the teaching stuff. But the reality is, like, the majority of NFL teams, like the way they're getting pressure is creating one-on-one matchups and then having elite edge rushers or elite inside rushers or even elite linebackers win those one-on-ones and create pressures and sacks. And so at the end of the day, yeah, you definitely don't want to give up kind of unobstructed pressures. But at the end of the day, what it's ultimately going to come down to is one-on-one matchups. And do you have the roster in place to take advantage of those one-on-one matchups? Like, you watch Philadelphia, and guys like Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata are able to win for 3-4 seconds. It's just unreal. Like, that is not normal at all. And
We'll
so,
take 2 seconds over
yeah,
here
it'd
in
be nice,
Eason.
wouldn't it? And so, you're having to then decide, what kind of time do we actually have? And what's interesting, I think, with Stroud is he's not as much of a creator outside of the pocket. Like, you look at a Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson, where like you're really encouraging him to. I know Doug Nussmeier talks about like getting above the 2.5. Like, once the 2.5 hits, there's like a second play beyond the 2.5, and guys like Jalen Hurts can create in that space. Guys like Lamar Jackson and even like Bo Nix to an extent, like can do some creation stuff. And so, are they going to ask CJ to do some creation stuff beyond that, or are they going to look for him to play more on time? That's kind of the question that they're going to have to answer as well in year 3 of like Stafford is probably going to do stuff less with his legs and more manipulate with his eyes and do some
Yeah,
different things with subtlety in the pocket,
that's who
in the
CJ
movement.
wants to be.
Yes, correct. And you have to have a coach that is designing specifically for that, with especially a lot of the intermediate passing game. And so I would imagine you're going to see a lot of inbreakers, digs, basics, him being able to kind of manipulate the middle of the field and rip some of those throws.
Yeah, that'll be great. I mean, and so you kind of touched on another question, the last one on the offense, and I got one more before you go
Yeah.
about a current topic. But as far as last year, like obviously stunts and twists and delayed blitzes or nickel blitzes were all huge problems for us. But as the chat has mentioned, and you mentioned one-on-ones, like I mean, just in the Kansas City divisional playoff game on the last drive, the biggest drive of the season to have a chance to tie it, there was back-to-back possessions where Dalton Schultz was blocking George Karlaftis and then Chris Jones. Like, how much of that is on the coordinator and Slowik, and how much of that is just Vic Fangio. And like, because I felt like that was something like, and maybe that's because he was a young play caller and still like it takes time to like get your stuff down to now be able to have that next level to look for these next level things. Like it looked like guys were out of position a lot, and like another bookend off of that was like guys would get hurt and you'd feel like you have a certain game plan in place. Like the first time he played the Chiefs, Tank Dell was like featured in the offense. You could tell it was a concerted effort. He got hurt, and then now you kept running the same stuff, but now instead of Tank Dell, it was a guy off the street. And so, are those things, is that something that's correctable? And that was just maybe because he was younger and experienced?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not in the room, so I can't speak with certainty on it, but I do think Steve Spagnuolo is one of the elite of the elites in terms of manipulating the rules that you have for pass protection and taking advantage of them, especially with what he does with Chris Jones, because Chris Jones typically like he's such a gravitational player. When I talk about gravitational players, it's like an Aaron Donald, where it's like it affects everything you do on that entire side of the football. And so obviously, like you never want him matched up one-on-one with a tight end. But the question then becomes like, were you at a place in the offense where you had enough protections built out to answer some of those, critical problems? And I will say, as much as like sometimes it's easy to pin it on the offensive guy, Spags is also elite at creating manipulating rules for the offenses, and he does.
He might have set that up all game though, right? He
Yeah.
might have given you this look all game, and then boom, last drive, switch it up on you.
He's incredible. Between him and then what they're doing in Baltimore, I mean, there's some elite defense for sure in the AFC, and then obviously the NFC. You got Philly and some others, but Philly's not as much. They're just they've got some freaks,
dogs. It's nice when you got a front four that can get pressure like that, right? I mean, that's basically one of the interior pressure too, right?
And then you can sit back and be more conservative in the back end, and that's always a luxury. And so, but to answer your question, you never want a tight end matched up on an edge rusher, or definitely not Chris Jones. So that's definitely not something you want. But it's hard for me to say with any definitiveness what's going on there.
But yeah, so it's been great. I guess the last thing I want to ask you is, I'm not sure if you've been following, but in Texans world, to half the fan base, the sky's falling. Everyone's worried about CJ Stroud and his shoulder. You mentioned you used to play quarterback. Obviously, you're around the game. Quarterbacks. What is your take on that? And what do you know? And what do you think is going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think every quarterback at that level is maniacal about their arm care and the way that they invest in taking care of themselves. And I think the sky is definitely not falling. I mean, Drew Brees is a great example of someone who experienced injuries and issues throughout his career and was so good with his rehab and prehab and just his process that it was never an issue. And I don't anticipate these shoulder issues to be affecting CJ in any significant way by the time the season rolls around. I think the reality is like there's no incentive for him to be out there ripping throws in OTAs if he's experiencing any sort of soreness, because the reality is like the most important thing for him right now is digesting what they're trying to do offensively, mentally, 100%. And he's got so many reps under his belt of live bullets that he'll be fine once training camp comes around. And I don't think they're concerned. I don't think the fans should be terribly concerned. I mean, if it's a surgery issue that they're covering up, which I don't even know if they're allowed to do, that's a totally different story. But knowing some of these guys, like you would be shocked at how much time each of them spent every single day caring for their arm. I mean, that is the golden goose right there.
Absolutely. That's a moneymaker, man. I agree. And I don't know how much you know about shoulders, but like people are concerned because he fell on his, AC joint a couple times and that happened before. But like I've researched, and my understanding is the rotator cuff can get tendonitis and soreness. And if you have inflammation from throwing too much, that can now weaken the ligaments that protect that capsule. So when you do fall on it, it's more likely to be more severe. And so like I don't know if this makes sense to you or if you know, or if I'm talking crazy, but like it seems like he is doing this now to prevent later in the year if he were to get hit to lessen the impact on those. Is that sound right?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things like when I was coaching in high school, putting quarterbacks on pitch counts and different things like that, and just it's a natural part of the process, and you'll see it with pitchers all the time, right? Like, you're not going to have, your stud ace go out there and pitch 7 innings in spring training. Like that's not what you do. You ease them into the process, and obviously quarterback's a little bit different than a pitcher, but at the same time, it's rotational athletes, throwers of balls, and I think there's nothing to be terribly concerned about. And at the same time, um, you know, when you're talking about quarterbacks in the NFL, there's a couple times a year that you're really opening it up and like ripping a ball. The majority of the throws are layered throws or timing throws that aren't necessarily asking you to reach the outer limits of your throwing power. And just because you can throw the ball 80 yards does not mean you're a successful quarterback in the NFL. We all
Anthony
know that.
Richardson.
Yeah, we all know that. His accuracy and precision and timing and all of that is what makes him elite. And I would expect that all to be in place by the time the season rolls around.
Thank you for those words. I didn't need it. I know a lot of us in here didn't, but some did. So, Dan, we appreciate it. I didn't even talk about your book or your handles. It's all in the bottom here. But
For
before you
sure.
go, if you want to shout out what you got going on.
Yeah, man. I one of the things I do every season is I call them trends in offensive football, basically like the best of what you saw in 2024 and how that will affect what you'll see in 2025. So I would imagine you're going to see a bunch of those concepts next year for the Texans. If you want to pick that up, it's on Amazon. It's on my website, Trends in Offensive Football Volume 2. You can see Volume 1. I know you guys are probably going to be sad about this, but Bobby Slowik actually ran an awesome little filter screen in the red zone. They scored a touchdown on it. He like flipped it to the running back. That was in Trends in Volume 1. He did some good stuff year one that I really liked. So, yeah, check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to check it out, and maybe we can work out like an affiliate program to kind of help,
For
push some of
sure,
your
man.
stuff, or
For sure.
or even I'll just promote it regardless. I appreciate you coming on, but
Absolutely, man.
and maybe I'll have to give you a shout another time to get your insight on some things, maybe midway through the season or something like that.
For sure. Yeah, maybe I'll follow the Texans a little bit closer this year. I am a Houstonian, so I'm always rooting for them, but not always totally diving into the film. So I'm excited to check them out a little bit more this year.
But you're not born and raised here, right?
I'm
You're
not
from
born and raised,
Carolina.
no. And honestly, when you're in the coaching world, it's like hard to be a fan. You're studying the schemes,
Yeah.
you're rooting for your friends, but I'm not sitting there with nachos on the couch very often. I'm usually at my desk peeling through the film.
That's awesome, man. I'm so jealous of you.
It's pretty fun.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate it. I'm gonna hang on, but whenever you're ready, you can I think there's like a leave button on the top right. And yeah, appreciate it. Y'all go
Awesome.
check them out.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Appreciate you, and go Texans.
All right, appreciate it, Dan. All right, guys. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Coach Dan Casey. I mean, if y'all don't follow him, please do on all social media platforms, X, Instagram, YouTube is at Coach Dan Casey. He knows, he's well connected. He knows all these coordinators. He's a consultant. He has the books. Check him out on his website, coachdancasey.com or Amazon. I'll just kind of go through and do my normal Q&A, and hopefully it's not too long, but hey, I'll just start shouting out people. Joseph Rivera, shout out Joseph Rivera, Mellow Mike, Neil M. Y'all had some good questions. I tried my best to kind of like, casually get those in without interrupting Dan. Mellow Mike, Neil M. We got, of course, Engineer, the GOAT. Obviously, Brandon's in here. Shout out Brandon. Space Age 713. That's my guy. What to do? Who else we got? We had a couple more in here that I missed that were in here earlier. And I don't know, like, if my X is connected or not today. It may be just YouTube. I had an issue with Instagram, so sorry for that. And if you're listening right now, anybody, if you're listening again later, as always, please feel free to subscribe to all of my platforms at Texans Commenter on Twitter and TikTok and YouTube, and then at Houston Stressins on Instagram and Facebook. YouTube, I hit YouTube's been going crazy. I went from like 2,000 to like 10,500 in the past 2.5, 3 weeks. It's been awesome to see. I really appreciate it from every single one of you. Shout out Forever Royal in the chat. Sonny, his first time joining. Thanks for tuning in, Sonny. And Abdul Agani, that's my guy. Shout out Abdul. And yeah, if y'all haven't seen it too, I'll just go real quick. I think the best way to kind of transition the rest of the show is to kind of show my timeline on X, but I think I will start with my site. I wrote an article on the CJ Stroud injury, and that was kind of good to kind of talk to Dan about it at the end. And I guess what I can do is I can kind of go through the article and tell y'all my thoughts based off that. It's super in depth. If you want to check it out, I'll pull it up here. It's at houstonstressens.com. But basically, when I do these articles, they're like analysis or opinion, but I also try and make it like beneficial for anybody else to kind of derive at their own opinions. Like, I don't want to like force feed and say this is absolutely correct. But I kind of like provide you with all the things that I see that I think make it relevant to prove my point. But I learned a lot when doing this. That's probably my favorite thing to do. Is on these research pieces is you kind of learn a lot yourself and it gives you a better understanding. But I had an initial suspicion of what it was, and we talked about it here the first day that it happened in OTAs. I said it's a pitch count, like it happens. Like when I played, the quarterback, they would make sure not overuse a guy. And Dan Casey said the same thing. It's a pitch count. It's normal. I get that there's a concern. Let me just go to the article. Basically, everything I'm saying will be kind of set out in here. So, obviously the timeline was he didn't throw the first day, and they basically said everyone's on different schedules. And that's when we're like, hey, he's just, getting his rest. He's on a pitch count. Maybe he'll throw the next day. He didn't throw the next day. That's when Caley spoke, and he was on the same terms as D'Amico, said no concern whatsoever, refer to the schedule. And then, I think it's been 3 days now that they had practice, either 3 or 4 days. And, the last day was yesterday when D'Amico spoke, second time in 4 practices of OTAs that the media's been to. I mean, maybe there's been sessions that we haven't seen where he has thrown, who knows? But D'Amico tried to get out in front of it. And I don't know if we played these, but we can play these videos here. So let's see. He starts off like getting ahead of it.
First off, I know everybody's going to ask, first, is CJ not throwing again? There's no concerns with CJ. It's just general soreness. We're taking extra precaution with him, but he'll be good to go. No concerns on my end there. Really excited the way our guys are working.
So he basically came off the jump without, any questions, said, hey, I know y'all going to ask. It's general soreness, no concerns. Like basically saying like, all right, guys, like just don't even bother. Like we're good. And so then after that, he's asked again about it. Like so then he has one question asked and he repeats, yeah, general soreness. And then he's asked again by Will Kunkel if he had surgery, which I think is a good and great and fair question. But this is his response here. He seems to be bothered by it, but I'll play this and then we can talk about it shortly after.
For CJ, it'll be, like I said, he has general soreness, and we're just taking extra precaution with him. When he's ready to go, he'll be ready to go.
So that was the first question after his remarks, and he's like, yeah, it's general soreness. And then the very next question, the second question.
Did he have any work on his shoulder in the offseason?
He said, did he have any work on his shoulder in the offseason, which is a valid, fair question.
That's it for CJ, guys. On the questions, that's it. What I said, that's it for him. Like, it's general soreness, and we're taking extra precaution with him. We're not going to rush him into anything. He'll be fine. When the moment is for him to be ready to go, he'll be ready to go.
And so this is where, when he answers, he starts to, like, pull up his sleeves and seem whatever. So this is right here.
What I said, that's it for him. Like, it's general soreness, and we're taking extra precaution with him. We're not going to rush him into anything. He'll be fine. When the moment is for him to be ready to go, he'll be ready to go.
And so some people, I mean, I can see it as, bad body language, like he's lying, like he's hiding something. I see it personally as he's frustrated and agitated with the media. Like, hey guys, like I said, I'm not talking about it. And yes, he could have like said no, but like then you're just enticing and encouraging more questions. And so like, in my opinion, he's just standing firm. Like, I'm not talking about it, like whether he did or didn't have it. And we talked about on here too, like, they had a couple of approaches on how they could handle this. They could have came out right off the bat and said he's not practicing because of the soreness or whatever it is. But instead they said everyone has their own schedules. And so, you either come out and say whatever it is right away, or you kind of beat around the bush somewhat and either way, there's going to be speculation. But if they would have done the opposite and came out right away, I mean, I'm sure their rationale was, okay, now it's going to be a huge overreaction. Instead, like, they kind of kicked the can down the road. And who knows, maybe it is like a day-to-day thing. And they're like, okay, maybe he'll throw by the next time we speak and it's not a big deal. But here we are 2-3 times. It still hasn't happened. So you're still having to answer it. So either way, it's going to be a big deal to fans and media. I mean, because like rightfully so, it is like, okay, why is he not throwing? But I mean, I was kind of frustrated with their approach initially, but now I kind of get it. Like, I get the argument that they don't owe us anything, but I do get the argument that fans want to know. But I genuinely think that it is nothing. If it were to turn out to be something, and then them having taken this way, that would make me upset. But I really do believe this is like, if it really is just soreness, and that's what he said the first day, everyone's got different schedules. So he's like, so that means basically he's not ready. And then he gets asked again. He's like, no, it's soreness. He could be honest and consistent, which I believe he is. And so, but I mean, overall, like when we get into the article here, I say I'm not worried. And, I kind of go through the possibilities from minor to major. The first possibility is routine soreness or overuse inflammation, most likely, which is what I think it is. And let's see here. And that's kind of what Aaron Wilson has been reporting as well. He basically said, it was like tight shoulder muscle soreness. I know it was like chest reported first, and then it was shoulder. And so then the next possibility is maybe he did have a minor cleanup, like a scope or something. And that can be done to get like debridement or fraying out of there, or like a bursa sac removal is sometimes something that can happen. Or it could even be like a minor labrum trimming, which, so there's been times that that's happened. Dak Prescott is one. He had on his non-throwing shoulder, had a scope or a cleaning, and no one really knew about it until later. I guess they were able to hide that because it was his non-throwing shoulder. But just a couple of videos on here. This was a video today with Chris Sims on CJ Stroud. Again, my opinion, I don't know. This is his opinion. He doesn't know, but he's a former quarterback and kind of knows the deal. I'll play what he has to say and then give my analysis on what he says.
Here, this has all. First off, let me just say this: I think if he got shoulder surgery or anything like that, we would have heard it. We would have heard it. So I have a hard time thinking that's the deal here. This has all the signs to me, Mike, of tendinitis, general soreness. This, to me, has all the signs of we got back training, I started throwing, maybe I threw a little too much at first, and now the inside of my elbow hurts, right? It's how golfers get it at times, right? Tennis players, stuff like that, because of that hinging and all of this as a thrower. And if you're not in shape for that or don't approach it the right way when you get back into it after a long period of time, that's when that can flare up. And this, to me, has all the signs of that type of thing. Elbow, shoulder. I would bet it's more elbow than not, but we'll see where it goes. But it certainly looks like that to me in my experience around the NFL.
In his experience around the NFL, I would say I don't necessarily agree from what we've heard that it's elbow, but it's more so shoulder or chest. And so, it probably is him ramping up too soon. And who knows, it could be like him working too damn hard. Like, we haven't seen him all offseason. He had a bad season last year. He's probably determined to be better this year. He could have like overworked the shit out of it in the offseason, throwing with receivers or trainers or whatever. That could have been it. That sounds like a plausible one, but I agree. I don't think it was a surgery. You probably would have heard about it. I mean, maybe you didn't if it was a minor one. But I still get the, concerns. And then, you kind of point out he was shooting basketballs at the Comic-Con event the other day, or whatever it was called, DreamCon, whatever it's called. Obviously, it's not the exact same muscles as a shoulder, but, and I think the big thing, too, about this whole saga, I guess we'll call it, is when people talked about being concerned, not concerned, is I think a lot of us aren't talking on like the same levels as to what you're concerned about. Some people would say they're concerned, but they're concerned because he's missing reps with the new receivers and Christian Kirk, Jaden Higgins, and Jalen Noel, and not throwing in the new offense with Nick Caley. Where some people were concerned that he tore his shoulder and had surgery. Or some people are concerned that he's holding in, which I address in the article, is that's just ridiculous. Like, he's not even due for a contract extension until next year. But so that's part of it too. When people are talking online about, being concerned or not. Okay, how concerned are you, and what is it you're concerned about? I have mild concerns about him not getting the reps, but like overall, like, I'm not worried. I don't think it's something major. He wouldn't be shooting a basketball. I know, again, it's not the exact same muscles, but if this is someone coming up with a serious injury and he was in bad spirits and this and that, would he be shooting basketballs? Would he be at practice dressed out doing all the drills except throwing? Like, no. And then, obviously another part of that too was he was wakeboarding just the weekend before. There's a guy.
There you go, bro.
He was in Austin, Memorial Day weekend with David Mulugeta, which is like right before OTA. So, I mean, like, if he had surgery, would he be out there? I mean, and this is him on a boat, so maybe he didn't do it, but he's on a wakeboarding boat or, tubing. You would assume he wouldn't be doing this if he was hurt. He looks fine here. There's no bandage or wrap or anything crazy. And then also there is a theory, which could be plausible, is maybe he strained it tubing, maybe, I mean, that shit's no joke. So that's something minor that could have happened there. And then I kind of dove into like his injury history and what it means. And so I kind of learned a little bit when doing this, but shout out Landry Locker. He's done a good job, investigating all this. He's had some good videos kind of detailing the timeline and stuff like that. And I think he's doing a good job. Like, these are questions and things that need to be asked and looked at. And regardless of who resides where on what they think, it's an opinion. Like, it doesn't need to be like, oh, you're an idiot. Like, but it also doesn't need to be like we just totally ignore it. Like, yeah, you can look into it. So, but basically, I learned at Ohio State, like, the way I see it is he got hurt in the first game, like we saw in the NFL a couple times against the Ravens and the Jets, and I believe it was the Colts week 2 of his rookie season, from getting hit and landing on his shoulder. But to me, it's like I talked with Coach Casey, they kind of go hand in hand. It starts with the tendonitis or the soreness, which just comes from throwing or overuse and not resting and managing. That's not like an injury. That's just like stuff that happens. So he talked about how his we'll listen to it here. There's a video I embedded on here from the Big Ten Network.
And what a season has been for Ohio State redshirt freshman QB CJ Stroud. First year as a starter, top 7 in the nation in all the categories you see here. Leads the Big Ten in passing yards per game. Last 4 weeks, 15 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions. CJ Stroud is today's big interview. He joins us now from Columbus. And CJ, this is a team that leads the nation in total offense, leads the nation in scoring offense. What has made this attack so dangerous?
First of all, I just want to thank God. Without him, I wouldn't be here. So definitely have to thank him. But, I mean, I just feel like the way we
look how young he looks, dude. That's crazy.
Prepare and the great coaches that we have really is a boost to our positive season, and we're really just now starting to click with each other, and then we're just having momentum. We're starting to roll.
You say you're just now starting to click. Was there a moment for you or a game for you where you felt like, wow, I got this, or it elevated somewhat for you?
No, I just feel like gradually as the season, I just got better and better. I never felt like we were playing too bad. I mean, of course, the season didn't start the way we wanted it to with that second game, but I mean, in the game of football, nothing's perfect, so you just have to let that go and keep moving. I feel like that's what we did. My teammates, they helped me a lot. I leaned on my brothers, and I mean, they helped me. So.
You did have a little bit of action last year. You read.
So this is where he asked the question, I believe.
Sure did, but you got into a few games. What did you learn from watching Justin Fields?
Or this is going to be the next question.
He taught me a lot. He taught me the speed of the game really doesn't change. It's just the mindset. I mean, you really have to be locked in every single play. You have to make good decisions. You have to handle the game well. You have to manage the game as a quarterback. But at the same time, go do you and make plays and just be confident. And I remember he texted me before the season started. He said, no matter how the season starts, just know that you'll finish strong. And you just have to get comfortable out there.
The season did start with some challenges for you. The day we were at camp, you were clearly having shoulder issues. You took that Akron game off as well. What was bothering you with your shoulder in the preseason and early in the season here?
Yeah, I just was banged up. I mean, fall camp, I had stress rotator cuff, but the season injury was a whole different injury. It was in the Minnesota game. I had got hit right on my shoulder and separated my AC joint. So that one wasn't fun. It was kind of painful. But yeah, that was kind of like the struggles with that. But that week of rest really helped me just really gain back my confidence and my strength in my shoulder. So
When you say
Damn, I'm on mute. I freaking hate when I do that. So this was the part where basically he talked about, the injury he had his first year at Ohio State, or his first year as a starter. He started off with, I had tendonitis, or I stressed my rotator cuff in camp, which comes from overuse. That's not an injury from like trauma or getting hit. That's just from throwing the ball too much. And that's not because you're weak or this or that, or your genetics. Like maybe he didn't strengthen his muscles good enough in the offseason. Okay, you could maybe say that. But the point is he had that. He didn't take care of it. He was fighting for a starting job, so he was pressing on it. And then because of that, this area is weak. And now when you get hit on it, now the separation can happen. And so that's a case. This is like actually good for now. Okay, like, yes, if it's happening now, back off. So when the season comes, we know you can throw and this and that. You can throw all these damn routes. We know that. And now when you do get hit, like we saw against the Ravens and the Jets last year, it won't be as bad. But also it's crazy, too, that he played 2 or 3 games. Happened in the first game, and he didn't sit out a game until 2 or 3 weeks later. And then he was basically good to go, and he finished the season with, like, crazy numbers. So, yeah, sorry I had the mic on mute there, but yeah, Joseph says Dan has great content on YouTube. Yeah, y'all need to check him out on Twitter and Instagram too. He's got awesome content. He knows ball, a lot of good stuff. Neil asked if CJ met up with any receivers for practice this offseason. Not that I know of. I hope so, but if not, whatever. Mellow Mike talks about the Christian Harris situation playing a factor. Yep, I got that in the article here we'll get to in a second. And then let's see. What's going on here? Mike says younger guys training on their own, you can overdo it with their workouts. Yeah, especially if you're young and driven like CJ and went to like, rookie of the year, high of the high, and then had like a down year. He's probably like, I'm going to work my way back up, and probably he's overdoing it. Let's see. Neil says only worry is missing time to gel with the receivers. Yep. And then Mike says you can gel with them, basically later in between games. I agree with that. Abdul says, yeah, I don't think it's too bad. I feel like we overreact at times, but hopefully it's all good. Yeah, I mean, it's also what else do we have right now? This is all we have, And if this is during the season, whatever this is, we wouldn't even know this. And then he would just play. And he played through the actual trauma injuries at Ohio State. He played through it on the Texans on 3 separate occasions. He's been hit on his shoulder and played through it. The one against the Ravens, he played right through. He's a tough MFer, dude. Yep, definitely had my mic off, and everyone's let me know. Just making sure y'all are asleep. I appreciate it. Brandon says, have to separate between what the real info about Stroud is versus local media members who just get angry when they don't get the scoop they want or answers worded using the exact verbiage they want. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're alluding to, but, I mean, regardless, like, what I've learned is, you take everything with a grain of salt regardless. And you kind of have to rely on certain people because they're there. But I mean, with the way today is with like internet, access to videos of practice and press conferences, you can kind of, on most things, kind of come to a decent conclusion yourself. Shout out Marcus Hill for tuning in. Brandon says, now it's getting a little spiteful too. Some media members just want to get in front of Caserio or D'Amico to tell them they're doing a bad job or that they don't approve. Yeah, I mean, I don't know who or what you're exactly referring to. Like maybe that's the case, but yeah, I don't know how that all jives. I mean, I really don't know how reporters are or what they do or what that's like, but I mean, that could be the case, but I mean, it's just May and June and we all want something to fodder over and here it is, you know? But yeah, so he talked about that. And then, as I mentioned, here was the hit from the Ravens. And so you want to keep this intact and strong and not banged up for when you do sustain these hits that it's not as bad.
To mix in, and then Baltimore went 9 yards to extend their lead. The yardage difference being the biggest thing here. And they will go to the air on first down. Stroud feeling it. Stroud gets rid of it. And incomplete for Schultz. Owe, who already has a sack today, applied the pressure, and now Stroud is slow to get up.
And it's on the rookie, Blake Fisher. He's up playing right tackle, and Adafe Owe just wins so fast. And that's really been the story of the season, and we're going to have to go out and check on CJ Stroud.
Shout out Sideline Sarah. That's her video she had posted. But so I don't think that this injury is from that. I think this injury could have made this worse if it was the timeline was different. So that's my take. I may be way wrong, but from what I've researched and from what I know and from talking to other people, and as far as that hit there, you know, the worst thing would be a labrum tear, which I've done myself in my shoulder playing flag football a couple years after actually playing real football, going out and, you know, thinking I'm still the man and playing too hard, one up for a ball or something. A labrum tear usually happens when you pop your shoulder out, not from landing on it. This is more of the separation of the AC joint, which is all the hits we see with quarterbacks. They fall like this. They don't really fall like that and pop it up. But the labrum, like, from my understanding, is what helps keep it in place. And that was, for me, it was like a 6-month recovery. And I was like 24, 25. I was still young and like in decent shape. And it took a while to get full range of motion. But I mean, that would be worst case. And that's not the case here. So again, I don't think this is what he's dealing with now. I could be wrong, but I suspect what he's dealing with now is to prevent when these hits happen from being worse. Could be way wrong, but that's just kind of the way I see it. And then CJ Stroud too, like there's a concern he alluded to last year being injured, which this is right after the Ravens game, after that hit.
You know, I've tried to approach the game the same way I did, you know, and even, you know, I think I'm seeing it better, you know, just a little banged up, so I'm not really making plays, and that's a terrible excuse, but I mean, really just not making plays. That's really the difference between last year and this year for me, is just not making enough plays. So, and, you know, there's times where, you know, the plays are to be made and there's guys open and I got to find a way to, you know, make the play work, make somebody miss, or do something just that I'm capable of doing, you know, and you know, winning us a football game, you know, that's really, you know, up to me to lead our team in those times where guys are open, and, you know, ultimately it's just.
So that was right after the Ravens loss, and he's probably talking about getting hurt in the game. It could have been lingering from before, but I don't really think so. And then even then, like with this hit, he went on to finish the season great. You know, he played great against the Chiefs, had one of the best games grade-wise. PFF, again, we know it's not the end-all be-all, but Chargers, we saw that. He kind of finished the season strong despite, you know, getting banged up. Brandon asked, what do you think about the fact that Kirk has already been teammates with J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins before? That's crazy. I never even thought about that, but that's wild, dude. He was meant to be full circle. Mellow Mike, CJ just needs to develop his pecs, triceps, and traps to strengthen that arm. Yeah, or he just has to be smart. I mean, that, and you have to be smart about throwing. And then I'll get to it here in the article. I'll talk about like usage. His volume went up too. So, I mean, that's part of it as well. CJ said Neil said he played in playoff. There is no way you can injure labrum, rotator cuff, or even AC joint. This soreness is all off-season training. Thank you, Neil. Yes. And then, you know, could it be a pattern? No, this is what we're talking about. Like, you don't get chronic. You don't have a shoulder that chronically gets inflamed, from what I understand. You know, it just happens from overuse. I mean, maybe you're more sensitive than others, but it's not like He's been throwing his whole life. Like, he's good. And then as Coach Casey talked about, like, you look at Breeze and all, like, I'm sure Phillip Rivers and, all these quarterbacks, Manning, like, they all had their little nagging injuries and whatnot, and fix those or just manage them the right way. And he talked about how much they invest in their body and how in tune they are and how cautious. And then I point out another thing to keep in mind too is the Texans under Nick Caley and D'Amico Ryans have shown us they're very cautious about injuries and return from injuries. And so that can also be, extracted to being preventive on stuff, especially when it comes to your franchise quarterback. So here's just a clip of Caserio talking about this right here.
Once a player is injured, what can we do to get the player back in the safest way possible? And if we have to err on the side of caution, I think our thought process has been maybe let's hold a player an extra week if we can, if that's the best thing for them, and just try to figure out a way to play the game without him.
I know you have a lot of equipment in the
one. So obviously he's talking about returning from injury, but you would think they have the same mindset. Brandon says, you think Kirk can give us any info on the Jags that could help? We don't need any help, dude. Plus, it's a new regime. The only thing he can tell us is that Trevor Lawrence overthrows and is not accurate downfield. That's about it. But yeah, maybe there's some intel there. Engineer Kirk mentioned he met with Stroud outside the building. Oh, when did he say that? Was that in his interview? I guess I missed that. And then Brandon says he's got to know a lot about Lawrence, their O-line guys, and some BTJ. Yeah, personnel, I guess. I guess the scheme will be different. Mellow Mike, he knows Lawrence well, but Cohen will run a different offense from Peterson yet. And then Brandon says, I still think Cohen was becoming successful as he was in Tampa. The O-line and QB is working with their way different. Yeah, Baker, I feel like, is not getting enough credit. But Cohen, he's also a head coach now, too. He's not just a play caller. So head coach, like, being a leader of a team, like, if you think about head coach in the NFL, like, you're leading a room of like 50 to 60 like alphas, like someone like D'Amico, I can see commanding that room. Cohen, I don't know, but like watching his interviews, like something starts to go wrong, or if he has to make a tough decision, like how's he going to handle that? Is he going to lose the locker room? Are they going to respect him? I feel like people look at play callers being good at play calling and automatically assume that that's going to project into being a head coach. That's not the case. It's completely different. I mean, yes, if you're going to be the head coach and the play caller, your play calling may still be good, which honestly, if anything, it'll suffer because you have less time to focus on it. But it's totally different being a head coach, man. Like, that's what's crazy to me. Like, Ben Johnson, who knows how it turns out, but like, just because he's a savant at calling plays on offense, look at Mike McDaniel. Like, he's done decent, but like, it seems like he has a hard time keeping things running a tight ship. Like the way D'Amico is, like, he's got everyone like in line with what he wants. But like some of these other guys, they're just used to calling plays. And now because you're good at calling plays, you're supposed to lead a team of like grown ass men. I don't know, man. That's a thing to me that's always been crazy. But here's another video of D'Amico talking about injuries.
And not about anybody specific, but when you have players who are out and they might be able to go, but it's kind of iffy, how tough are those decisions? Because you might think, well, another week would be good, but we could really use you, but we don't want to make you worse. That must be really difficult to decide those things.
Oh, that's one of the toughest spots of being a head coach, right? Of having to make that call of if a guy's close, but
again, so just talking about Cohen a second ago, this is something else. As an OC, you don't deal with stuff like this. So it's more than just calling plays.
We still don't know. For me, I'll always lean towards making sure a player long-term health is always at the forefront of my decision, as opposed to, come back a week too soon, and now we lose you for, call it 4 or 5 more weeks. Yep. So let's make sure, right, you can practice throughout the week. Right.
So if he's worried about long-term health in the season, holding a guy back a week, what do you think they're doing with CJ Stroud in May and June with the rotator cuff? I mean, come on.
And let's make sure you can show your teammates and yourself, you can gain that confidence. I can go out and perform my job to the highest level.
You have to tell them to sit down? Like, hey, you got to sit, and they want to play?
Sometimes.
And Neil asked, are we going to sign anyone new with the few bucks we saved after the June 1st cut? I wasn't sure initially, but now with the, sudden retirement of Ronald Darby, I think they will get a cornerback. I said that, and then D'Amico basically said it. As far as what caliber, obviously we drafted Jalen Smith in the 3rd round, traded up to get him to be, a nickel / third corner. Now that Darby's out, you assume obviously right now on paper he's the 3rd corner. So depending on who they get will tell us, what they think of and where Jalen Smith is at. And to me, given the history and the track record of D'Amico, not being afraid to play rookies, outspokenly saying that, doesn't matter who you are, undrafted, how paid you are, rookie, whatever. If you're good enough, they'll play you. And then you look at last year in the, 2nd round, Kamari Lassiter, 3rd round, Kalen Bullock. Both those guys saw a lot of playing time on defense because they deserved it. So I would suspect Jalen Smith assumes that role, and he maybe just sign a depth corner that's, not crazy expensive. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe that's not the case, and they get one of the other top-tier guys. I'll go through my timeline. This may be a really long stream. We can go through that as well. So, Engineer asked about if I think DCs make better head coaches than OCs. I was always of the belief that OCs were better than DCs, and the biggest thing was because offense matters more, quarterback, all that stuff. And if you're not having to constantly turn over, your OC, if you have your head coach as your OC, then that's a huge benefit. And I, kind of had that as a knock against us hiring D'Amico. I wanted Shane Steichen, which he seems like still a good coach, but I mean, he started out like he was the man and maybe is starting to teeter, but I've learned a lot with D'Amico. I've learned a lot that culture, the intangibles as a leader really is huge. It's understated. And I doubted Raheem Morris in Atlanta. The only thing is you have to hit on hiring your OCs. We saw with Bobby, it looked great when he was good, looked bad when he was bad last year, but Raheem Morris hired Zach Robinson, worked out. So I think I would say overall, yes. You just have to juggle. I mean, it's tough to say because you got McVay and O'Connell. So you got both sides of it. Sirianni, I believe, is an offensive coach. You just need a good coach that's a good leader, a good manager. And then the last piece that D'Amico is learning is a good evaluator, a good recruiter, hirer of talent. And hiring the right guy. And so that obviously failed him. He's new, had a limited network when he had Bobby. But now this is his first time to go out and make a hire. And it seems like all signs are pointing that it's going to be a great hire with Caley. So we'll see how that shakes out. But it could be considered somewhat of a gamble for him retaining a lot of the offensive coaches, but this will also be a good litmus test on that front for us to see, okay, is D'Amico checking that box, which is often neglected. That's probably one of the more important parts of being a head coach is being a good hirer. I mean, you can't do everything. You have to delegate out and have good people underneath you. I mean, look at Nick Sirianni, dude. That dude is a dog. He's a beast. He's underrated. I get he's like a crazy, annoying, goofy antics, but, when they went to the Super Bowl the first year, they had both of their OCs left. Why am I forgetting both? It was Shane Steichen, and then it was Jonathan Gannon. So he won Super Bowl. Both coordinators left. Next year, hires 2 new coordinators. Both sucked. I'm pretty sure he fired both coordinators. He went to the Super Bowl and then went to the playoffs, lost in the first round, fired both coordinators, rehired 2 new coordinators, and won the fucking Super Bowl. Like, that is one of the most underrated aspects of being a coach, and Nick Sirianni is elite at it. He went and hired, I believe, was it Kellen Moore who went back to the Eagles? And then Vic Fangio on the Eagles, who came from the Dolphins. So, like, that won them the Super Bowl, his coordinators. I mean, obviously the talent in the roster, but, I mean, very underrated aspect of coaching, in my opinion. I am all over the place right now. That's how we do things around here. Engineer says we don't save cap space around these parts. Facts. Brandon, never know if Caserio does a trade with the 6th or 7th another round for a cornerback either. Yeah, that's true. Key Drain Johnson might make the practice squad developed into something. Says Mellow Mike, Forever Royal. Didn't we draft a safety from Penn State this year too? Yep. Brandon says that's Jalen Reed. Yep. And he seems like he's a versatile piece who could maybe be like that star type player down the road. And let's see what else we got. Jalen Reed. And Dillard says you sound like Common. I sound like Common, like the rapper? That's crazy. If that's what you mean. I don't look like him. Mellow Mike says more, not more, as in the young DBs. Forever Royal, I wonder if Mechie can play DB because our wide receiver room full right now. That's crazy. But yeah, so back to my article on, the injury. Talked about, basically they take their time to get guys back. And then I talked about usage being a factor. In college, in 2 years at Ohio State, he had 830 total pass attempts, and that includes the playoff games, so 25 total games. NFL, in 2 seasons, he's had 1,146 pass attempts in 36 games, so 11 more games and 316 more pass attempts and probably some more big hits, playing, NFL, everything's faster and more violent. So that's a big part of it too. And like I mentioned, there is concern that he's not throwing. And I get, and we talked about too, like this being a Houston fan in general, the Astros, Kyle Tucker, that whole saga of it being a bone bruise, this and that, and then it comes out as a fracture and he's out forever. And then as someone mentioned in the chat, Christian Harris, that whole saga as well, the calf strain, the no info, him coming out in training camp and supposedly re-aggravating it and then not coming back until basically end of the year. And then Jordan Alvarez just happened where, he had they said a strained thumb or something like that, and then was taking BP and the swelling went down like, oh yeah, shit, it's fractured. He's out for longer. Well, why was he taking BP? And so all that kind of plays a role into our, suspicions and stuff. And you can't blame us for that. So, check out the article. I will hit up the timeline. I wanted to try and go live yesterday while it was fresh to kind of cover everything that happened, but we'll kind of go through it. We kind of touched on most of it. Let's see what we got here. It's not sharing yet. We'll share it. Boy, C. Kirk, dude. Man, there was a lot of good quotes. I had trouble not clipping all the pressers, which I basically did. So it happens. I miss football. It's somewhat back temporarily. Let me make sure we get back to the beginning. YouTube. I'm at 10,500 now, dude. That shit's crazy. Let's see. What do we got in the chat? Brandon says Jimmy Horn just got injured. Oh, damn. He's nice, too. Panthers trade for Mechie. And Mechie and 6 for Jonathan Brooks. Mike says that Moore and Fangio he believes were hired by Roseman. I haven't really heard of GMs hiring your assistant coaches. That could be the case. Who knows? Brandon says if you had to knock out one team to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC Championship, who would it be? Chiefs, Ravens, or Bills? Man, that's tough. I would love to beat any one of them, man. I couldn't tell you, dude. But yeah, so just back to the timeline to kind of recap the last couple of days of practice. I guess we missed some of the other stuff too the day before because it was 2 days in a row, right? Yeah, okay, yeah, let's keep going down a little bit longer here in the timeline, fellas. Man, I post a lot. I don't know how y'all follow my ass down. All right, so we're getting there. Petrie's the man. What am I missing here? It was my last live, so that's a good place to go up from. And we're scrolling up to get to a good spot. And what do we see? Texans cap posted the new projected cap space after the Shaq Mason post June 1st cut went into effect, which didn't go into effect until June 2nd, is $13.4 million. And then keep scrolling up. What we got? Yeah, this is cool. So I'm redoing the shout out the bullpen with James, Roy, and Tom. I'm redoing like the member site on my website where you have like pages. I'm going to make it like a badass, essentially, website where anybody can claim them, especially if you're like a content creator, and put like, embed all your stuff, like your links to all your stuff. So it's basically like a link tree, but then you can also have the ability to work with me to get a store, which is what you saw here with them. That should be done by early next week. So be on the lookout for that. And what are we missing here? Hawk and Lock and Darby. And so I posted, Jalen Smith season. Here's like a list of names of, top available corners: James Bradbury, Kendall Fuller, Stephon Gilmore, Rasul Douglas, Mike Hilton, CJ Henderson. He was on the Texans last year briefly. Shaquille Griffin, wouldn't mind him back. Michael Davis, Emmanuel Mosley, Arthur Mollett, Asante Samuel Jr. So, I mean, that's not a terrible list for a QB3 or CB3 or 4. And then going back through the day, let's get to OTAs here in a second. We're almost there. I pointed this out. It's always crazy to see this graphic every year. The youngest starting quarterbacks in the NFL. Number 1 is J.J. McCarthy. Number 2 at 22. And Drake May at 22. He's number 2. I guess he's a little bit older. And then at number 3 is Caleb Williams, 23. Number 4, Cam Ward, 23. 5th youngest starting quarterback in the league, CJ Stroud, 23. That's crazy. And then, AR's at 6, 23. Bryce Young's at 7, 23. Jaden Daniels is at 8, 24. Michael Penix is at number 9, 25. Trevor Lawrence, 10 at 25. And going back up, scrolling. Boy, Sting was out there catching passes before. Cassell running some gasser. Hawk and Lock jamming out again. Justin Watson was back. Cody Stutes reported that Dalton Schultz was back. And Christian Kirk was back after a Friday absence. So just from what we're seeing here with other players that no one's talking about, everyone has their own schedules. Kirk didn't practice. Mixon hasn't been there. Schultz didn't practice. Like, it's, and no one's freaking out about those guys. Like, I get it, but everything's adding up to what they're saying. Everyone has their own schedules. PFF had a list of the top 32 corners in the NFL. They had Sauce number 1, LMAFO, Surtain number 2, McDuffie number 3, Jalen Johnson number 4, and Sting number 5. GTFO. That's hilarious. That's rage bait. And so, Stroud didn't throw again. People freaking out. Wexler reported the first O-line we saw this time was Robinson, Tomlinson, Andrews, Howard, Fisher, which is what we saw basically the first time the media was there. And let's see. Jonathan Alexander from the Chronicle reported that Nico and Kamari were working on the side on their releases. And then he also reported that Davis Mills threw a pass to Christian Kirk for a wide open pass. Nice gain. And then he hit Nico on a short pass with Derek Stingley tighten coverage. So that's awesome. Good on good right there. And then Aaron Wilson, shout out Aaron Wilson. Shout out all these people. Jonathan Alexander, Cody Stutes. He said Graham Mertz, Jalen Noel, Braxton Berrios worked on side field today with trainers. And then Alexander said Mills scrambled and hit Jaden Higgins for a walk TD on team drills. Didn't see he was in coverage. And then he said Dalton Schultz is back practicing. And he's caught a pass from Mills. He said Will Anderson Jr. is continuing to cook out here. He beat Blake Fisher on back-to-back plays. Yeah, he's going to go crazy. Yeah, we listened to that on D'Amico. And then here is D'Amico talking about Darby's retirement.
I know what that decision is like. It's not an easy decision, but I just want to wish Darby the best. I know it's a very difficult time to step away from the game that you love whenever that decision comes, whether, it's voluntary or it's your body saying you can't do it. It's difficult because you've done it for such a long time, and I don't take that decision lightly. And when it comes to us and how do we fill the position, yes, we'll look to add another corner. Whether it's a veteran or a younger player, whoever it may be, we'll look to add a guy.
We'll look to add another corner, whether it's a veteran or a young guy, which I'm curious too. I guess they don't know yet either. My guess is they'll kind of let this play out, OTAs, to give Jalen Smith some reps now and see what they got. And then from there, they can decide what path. I love this. Great question by Kunkel. D'Amico on if there's a new culture or attitude with the O-line.
Our offensive line set, I see it drastically changing. I see Coach Cole Popovich, his instant impact on those guys. You can see it from the way they work in their individual drills, the way they come off the line with low pass. It's just the small technique things that you see, how they're dialed in on their hand placement, just speaking the same language. One of the coolest things I've seen when we were working out in phase 2.
Speaking the same language, one voice. That's better. But remember before he kept saying one voice is what we need. Sounds like we got one voice finally. And that translated to a lot of the unblocked pressures,
We work out, we activate our guys here in the bubble, and we all travel outside to do our different drills. And to see the O-line come out, and whoever was out first, they waited on the other guys. And they waited, they joined together as a group, and then they traveled down to the opposite end of the field to do their position work. So that just shows me that togetherness, that connection that I truly believe in. You want to be a great unit, you have to be connected. So Cole has kind of spurred that.
And so it's already like last year was a bunch of individuals. It's already more of like, that's how O-lines are. Like if you've ever played football, like every good O-line is supposed to be like a brotherhood. Like they're a bunch of like dogs. Like they do everything together. Like they're brothers, and not to say that those guys weren't last year, but like at least the play on the field didn't appear that way. And, D'Amico he's a head coach who's a DC who delegated everything to Bobby in the offense. And then this issue happened. And by the time that he caught wind and tried to help, it was too damn late. And so now he's aware of the issue. He went and addressed it by firing Bobby, hiring Nick, probably being involved, obviously, with Nick Caserio on who to get and what kind of guys to get. Maybe before he might have delegated to Caserio, or he might have delegated to Slowik on what kind of O-lineman they wanted. Now he seems to have a hand in the types of guys and which guys that he wants. And so with that, like him saying this, he's citing an example of, rather than like individuals just all walking to the next place and I'll see you there when I see you there. It's no, we're going to go together, which sounds corny and dumb as a little thing. But I mean, the fact that it happened and he's pointing it out is a big deal. And then it's like, as he's going to say here, like he's making it sound like this is coming from Popovich.
Connection, that intensity, that spurred that connection, that intensity, a great unit to be connected. So Cole has kind of spurred that connection, that intensity, the mentality that I'm looking for. And we have that. We have the intangibles of what it takes. Now we just got to go out and get it done when we put pads on.
We have that. We had that connection, that unit, that intensity. Pause. Let's go, dude. We fucking got it. That's all. Like, you don't need a bunch of individuals who are like, you need guys that are average to above average that play together. All the issues we had as far as pass blocking and, guys unabated, that's from fucking individuals, miscommunication, not being on the same page. You don't care that much for your brother to where you're, oh, I got my block. Oh, that's on you, bro. Like, no, like we're a fucking unit. We're one cohesive unit. Like you do every fucking thing together, even this little ass shit in the off season, like this dumb ass shit. If they're doing that shit together, they're going to fucking do the shit on the field together. So like, and the fact that D'Amico is aware of this shit and he made it known, like, hey, like we need to fucking fix this. I'm so crunk right now. I'm sorry for fucking cussing. I'm going to have to upload this as an explicit podcast. I didn't want to do that, but I'm hyped right now. D'Amico is aware of this shit. He knows what it takes, and he sent that message to Cole, and Cole knows that shit, and he's doing it. We're in fucking OTAs, and it's already happening. Like, this O-line is going to be way better than last year. Fuck all this shit about, oh, we got this guy, he sucks. Oh, we got that guy, he sucks. Fuck all that, dude. It's about a unit. It's not about LT, one of the best tackles. What the fuck did that give us? Fuck. That's my rant. I am so sorry. No more cussing the rest of the podcast. We're good. We're good. That shit's got me crunk, dude. God damn. Oh, man. Fucking hour 2. It's like I just started. That's crazy. I'm a loser. Let's see. Forever Royal. Mellow Mike says our O-line went from the vegan to raw meat diet. It's going to be all animals. Neil, I heard Trent Bound pulled Fisher to the side after Will Anderson blew past him twice. That's great to hear. Yeah. We got veterans in there to help teach them up. Forever Royal says Strausser and Slowik bumping heads on how to pick up stunts is what it sounds like. Oh, yeah, that's for sure what it was. Arik on Facebook says, be right back. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, sorry, I'm long-winded episode. You got to go take a break, bro. Appreciate it. And obviously, you can re-listen on podcast, Spotify, and Apple. Mellow Mike, I just kind of tune out of D'Amico or Casario talks O-line. Give me sound bites from Caley or Popovich if you want weight behind it. I disagree, man. I think D'Amico has his hands in on this. This is his job at stake. I mean, if the offense sucks again, he's on the hot seat, so he's going to fix this shit. That's the whole crux of last year from not making the next step was because of that. So, and he's aware of it. And then Engineer says the Commanders don't realize it yet, but we fleeced them. Mellow Mike, damn, bro, no more wine for you. I'm not even drunk. I'm just hyped, dude. And then Brandon, Mr. Red Gloves over here, Caley doing an Edelman impression about Tunsil tape. That's crazy. All right, we're almost done here. Let me get back through the timeline. Interviews. Kamari Lassiter is a great interview. I love this guy. He is awesome.
Will is a savage. Like, Will is a pure savage, and I love it. Like, from the moment I met Will, I already knew what time it was because he went to the other school, so I already knew how he was. And just being on the field with him, it's just like I relate to how he approaches the game because it's just like everything means so much more to him. Like, it means a lot to him. Being on this field every day, it means everything to him. Every rep means something to him. He's attacking every rep. And that I can relate to every time because it's like, oh, I got that same mindset.
Love it. And it's funny how he says that other school, that Bama-Georgia rivalry. But yeah, I mean, that's right. Like, they're both about that work. Like, they're on 100 24/7, dude. That's the way it's supposed to be because they love football, dude. Let's see. And then this was cool too. This is D'Amico on rookies.
Throughout the OTAs, for me, the mini camp doesn't change anything. Like, it's still the same process. Can you see continued growth from the guys? And this reminds me of last year, like some rookies, like Kamari and Kalen, watching them last year in these settings, watching how they competed, watching how they their impact showed instantly. They showed up, they were making plays, and you see how those guys perform throughout the season. So I think we have a similar situation this year with some of the rookie wide receivers and Noel and Higgins, just seeing their immediate impact on our offense, the plays that they're making, like seeing the way they work, the way they compete. I'm hoping that translates to the season as well. Similar to Kamari and Kalen, I think Jalen and Jaden are two guys who can really help us out this year.
So I know, like, a lot of us are like, we get hype about Jalen and Jaden, and people are like, oh, slow down, they're still rookies. But it's like, all right, dude, listen to this. They drafted them for a reason. They traded up for, those guys, or, one of them, and got Jaden when he traded back for a reason. We talked about it earlier. D'Amico is not afraid to play rookies. And, last year, Kalen and Kamari, specifically Kamari in OTAs, basically won the job then. And he's saying it's the same shit, but now it's with Jalen and Jaden. Like, he's fucking telling us, like, these guys are going to play and they're going to fucking ball out. So, there's no reason to believe that they won't produce this year. Like, they're good. We drafted them high. We're not afraid to play rookies. They're playing good. They will see the field and they will produce. So to me, as a fan, that's badass to hear. And let's see. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Mike. And then Engineer says Higgins and Noel about to go right up everyone in the league. Facts, dude. It's gonna be crazy. I really think we're gonna open that bitch up, dude. We're gonna go 4 and 5 wide. We might see the 5K this year, dude. CJ back in the shotgun, has control of the offense. Woo! And then kind of run out of the 3 and 4 wide sets. Yeah, that's crazy. And the chat's going crazy. And then Jalen Petrie.
Hey, I'm thankful. Now looking back on
this is him on, like, his injury last year.
Wonderful. I'm blessed. I'm thankful.
Blessing.
Now looking back on it, I'm thankful that the injury happened because it helped me and it allowed me to see things from a different lens. And I'm even more grateful to be out there now. Be able to be out there with my helmet on, flying around with my teammates. It's been for sure a blessing.
How long
All these guys we have, man, like he basically took a bad situation and gained great perspective on it. Like basically saying like he's more appreciative of the game and he was locked in even though he was hurt. So he learned and observed things and now he's going to be hungry as shit this year. That's a scary sight. Christian Kirk on Nico Collins.
The production makes sense just with who he is as a person, seeing him on the field. Somebody who's that big, that fast, that strong, has great hands. Like I said, it makes sense why he's been a top 5 receiver the past couple years. I was telling somebody, he kind of reminds me of a former teammate I played with, AJ Green, of just how big, strong, and explosive they are. A lot of the same like intangibles and whatnot. But just a great person. He wants to get better every single day. The fact that he's still asking questions and learning, I think, says a lot about who he is. So just really excited to work with him going forward.
That's crazy. So calls him a top 5 receiver in the league the past couple of years. Comps him to AJ Green. That's a great comp. And then the last part I really didn't pay much attention to until now. It's how much of a great person he is and how he's still asking questions trying to get better. That says a lot. Like, yeah, he's in like his fifth year now, whatever it is. He's a vet. But Christian Kirk is now more of a vet than him, and he's learning from him. So, like, that's dope, dude. Like, a lot of guys with his production and ability might be like, nah, I'm too good. Like, I don't need to learn shit from anybody. So, yeah, that's awesome, dude. Christian Kirk on joining the Texans.
The transition has been sort of amazing. Everybody in the organization has been welcoming from day one, players, coaches, staff included. And like you mentioned, playing at Texas A&M, it's good to be back. It's been a long time since I've been back in the state of Texas and, even down the street from A&M. So definitely looking forward to getting back over there. But it's been great. And now that we're in OTAs and getting on the field, working out the system, laying the foundation, just been really happy from day one. The transition.
So it seems to be going great for Kirk. He says has been nothing short of amazing. Christian Kirk on Nick Caley.
Nick is all ball, very intelligent, very smart, does a great job communicating to us, what the expectations are.
Does a great job communicating to us. That's a major key right there.
Route detail, motions, formations, whatever the case may be, he's done a great job.
Route detail, motions, formations. So like he's telling them like, I want you to do this, and this is why I want you to do this. I'm not saying that didn't happen before, but this sounds great.
I'm kind of laying that out for us, and it's been, I guess, primarily pretty easy. Just being able to learn it the way he's been able to install it.
That's also the mark of a good coach and a good offense. A lot of these air raid offenses you see and stuff, like you watch it on TV and you assume like they're super complex. And kind of what Coach Casey alluded to earlier is, and me and Cecil Shorts have talked about this too in our interview, is it may appear that way to the defense or to you watching TV, but it's still like the base package of concepts. It's just moving guys around to make it look different and all that stuff. So that's what he's saying here.
Ben McDaniels in our room has done a great job teaching us just all the things from a football IQ aspect that you need to know as a receiver. And this offense is dynamic. A lot of motions, a lot of pre-snap adjustments for the defense to have to, deal with. So I think you'll see a lot of guys in different places to be able to make plays.
This offense is dynamic, a lot of pre-snap motion. So that's the thing. He said you'll see guys in different positions. So you can run the same play, but instead of these two guys run this route, well, motion this guy here and then this guy here, and then now it looks like this. Like, it's just you get creative with stuff. And I will say, let me see. Let me check the chat real quick. Yeah. Oversized slots with motion, stacks, and bunches, spreads, deepest wide receiver room in Texans history. Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Trying to get all the chat on here, but I'm trying to wrap this up because it's been almost 2 hours and 10 minutes. Engineer says calling it Drew Brees like season from Stroud. Facts. Let's fucking go, Engineer. Like, that's what's crazy to me is like we were all hype as fuck last offseason, and it's like we got scorned by it, and it's like we're scared to like be optimistic again. But like call me an idiot, but like I feel the same way, bro. Like I feel like fucking Stroud can win the MVP this year, dude. Like this is when this shit happens, when the public overhyped us and now they fucking over criticize us. And it's like maybe we were here and now we're here. But yeah, dude, I mean, I think it's gonna be a great year, dude. I think it's gonna be a great year. Mike says Twin Towers 6'4" on the outside. I'm too hyped, man. It's fucking June. I need to chill out. But y'all better get used to it. I must start cranking this shit up the closer we get to the season. All right, Christian Kirk. Last clip on him, I believe. Let's see what he says here.
Months. Like I said, just being in the building, these past couple months makes sense why they've won the division the past 2 years, just with what D'Amico has done and the culture, and foundation, and the standard. Everybody comes here, and especially this year from day one, he's laid it out that.
So, I mean, I don't know if that's like an indirect shot on Jacksonville or Arizona, but like he says it makes sense why they've won. He mentions the culture, the foundation, the standard. And then this quote I love.
Our goal is to, put a bowl on the face of that ring and
put a bowl on the face of that ring. We're going to fucking do it this year, dude. We got a legit shot to win a Super Bowl. I love that quote from D'Amico, and all the players keep saying it. The fact that he's now said this, and then I think Will Anderson Jr. said it early on, put a bull on a ring. That means that he's saying that shit repeatedly, and he's like, obviously every team's goal is to win the Super Bowl, but like a lot of teams know that's not like their fate, so they don't like profess it. But like the trajectory we're on, like this team is talking about it every day. Like we want to win a Super Bowl. We're not just building and getting better. Like that's been done. Now the next step is to go win that bitch. And that's what they're talking about. So like that, the fact that the more you hear these guys say that in pressers, that means they're hearing it all the time in the meetings. And that's the way it should be.
I love that. I love that. That's the vision. That's the standard, because that's what we're here for. And
that tells you that probably wasn't the vision and the standard where he was at in Jacksonville. Like they're probably, yeah, we'll try and win one. We don't know if we're good enough. No, fuck that. We're good enough. We're going to go win that bitch.
Everybody comes to work and wants to make each other better. So just, definitely excited to be a part of it.
Let's see. All right. A couple chats and we're almost done. It's getting late. Forever Royal says playing with fire, Mike. Cowboys fans, how they get. Brandon Hallman could be worse most of the time being around Cowboys fans. My wife's a Cowboys fan, guys. Y'all know that, right? Though it's all good. Neil says LFG, give me all the Kool-Aid. Hey man, I'm the hype man for sure. A top 3. I think they can be a top defense. I think they can be one of the best. They can be a historically great defense. And so now if the offense gets on, like, I'm giving you some Kool-Aid, but like I think it can be crazy, dude. Like I gotta chill out. But here's a highlight of Higgins at practice. There's no audio, but Mills scrambles. Will Anderson Jr. is basically there for the sack, and Higgins catches it. Not sure who he burnt. And what else do we got here? Do we want to watch the whole recap? Nah, there wasn't much highlights on that recap, but let's see. Some Astro stuff. Shout out to Stros, even though they lost today. They beat Paul Skeens yesterday. Kirk. Here's another Kamari question.
Yeah, I feel like whenever I put these cleats on, I turn into a different person. I feel like it just means more to me, to be honest. Like football's been my everything. So anytime that I get a chance to step on the field, I'm gonna give it my all. Whether that's for 2 plays or 2,000 plays, it doesn't really matter. To be honest, we'd be here all day if I wanted to tell you every single thing that I'm trying to work on. But it's just, to be honest, I just want to become a better player, like just inside and out, from understanding what's going on pre-snap, understanding offenses better, understanding where my help is better, just understanding route recognition, or just doing the little things that can make me more successful. Watching the other players play, it's a lot of things that I really want to work on. I can't tell you everything because I'll be here all day with you. Really, my love for the game. I love football. Football has been the love of my life since I was 3 years old. So it's like just the fact that I'm living out my dream. I dreamed of this since I was a kid. and now I'm living out. Like, I'm living it out. So, like, why would I not put every single thing that I have into it?
You couldn't ask for a better player to have on your team, man. Like, you want 22 of these on your team. Like, you're going to get everything out of Kamari Lassiter that he can get. Like, this dude, just listen to him talk, like how mature he is, like how locked in he is. Like, he loves this shit, dude. Like, you know, he says, whenever I put these cleats on, I turn into a different person. It just means more to me. Like, that alone, like, there could be someone more talented than him, but the fact that, like, he fucking wants that shit, he's going to win. And then he says, we'd be here all day if I told you every single thing I'm trying to work on. Like, he's not satisfied. Like, he's hungry, man. Like, he wants to be the best. And then he says, football has been the love of my life since I was 3 years old. I mean, this dude loves football. Like, he's not out there just moping around. Oh, I'm getting paid. Like, no, I'm here because I love this shit. And then here's a clip today on ESPN NFL with Bill Barnwell, even though him and I got into it a little while ago. I forgot what it was about, but I agree with what he's saying here. I think y'all do too. And we've been saying this shit right here. So let's just listen to this.
One of the ways to avoid having your mediocre offensive line exposed is to keep them out of 3rd and long. And that's something the Texans could not do last year. They were in 3rd and long game after game after game. And that's because they couldn't run the ball on 1st down. On 1st and 10, they had the worst rushing success rate of any team in football, which is just measuring how often you're staying on schedule, not getting behind.
And that's what I referred to Dan earlier, the worst rushing success rate. So basically we would just get behind the sticks constantly, which someone in the chat asked Mike about how our run game will be this year. Last year was terrible because of the wide zone. You kind of run away from the line of scrimmage instead of just getting the ball and running straight. So when it does blow up, you have a lot more chance and a lot more times where you lose yards. And we saw it. And it was either Mixon trying to like make something out of nothing or getting, tackle behind the line of scrimmage. So back to Bill.
Behind the chain. And so one of the things I think we might see Nick Caley do is something he mentioned in that press conference, which is gap scheme, something the Rams did a couple of years ago to really revitalize their run game. They had been a zone-heavy run team, and they switched to more gap schemes with Kyren Williams, got some bigger offensive linemen in there, and that really got that run game going. The Texans were a very zone-heavy run team last year, so I wonder if Nick Caley is brought in some heavier offensive linemen. Cam Robinson's in here, Trent Brown is here, Laken Tomlinson, those guys are all 320, 330 or above. Are they going to be more of a gap run team to kind of give defenses a little more to worry about on 1st down and then avoid those 3rd and longs as a result?
Yeah.
It's like Bill Barnwell's watching our shit, dude. We've been saying this shit. Yes, thank y'all. Like, this is what's crazy. Like, these pundits, like, they can't know every team, but, like, we know this stuff. We've been saying that, and that's facts. That's some good stuff right there. Kamari again on Derek Stingley Jr. I thought this was pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like from the moment I got drafted, Sting was actually the first person to hit me. Like, I got drafted 2 minutes later, and just from the moment that we met, we kind of instantly clicked. I kind of understood him, he understood me, and we just talk a lot. Like, Sting doesn't talk to a lot of people, and he's not like a big talker, but like we talk a lot about football, but not even just football. Like, we got really close. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah, I didn't realize that Sting and Kamari were that close. He said he was the first person to call him when he got drafted. That's dope. And they are the best duo of quarterbacks in the league, bro. That's insane. Oh, God. I think that's pretty much all of it, man. Yeah, that was a great show. Appreciate you guys. As always, love all y'all. Feel free to follow me on all the stuff. You know where it's at. Website, subscribe to the newsletter. I'll be sending a newsletter out tomorrow free, and be on the lookout for some more cool, exciting stuff. I'm in talks with a pretty prominent national pundit on O-line to get on here to talk about O-line last year and this year. Hopefully that's this week. A couple other cool things in the works. As always, if you ever need anything, feel free to hit me up. Other than